Now that the dust has settled and all of the launch titles for the Absolute Universe have dropped, and we can see the sales of at least the first two, plus the sales of how Ultimate has been doing for the last year and Energon, I think it's pretty safe to say that all three of these new universes are not just successes, they are the biggest successes in the direct market. These books are booming. They are hugely popular critically and commercially. And I think it says something meaningful and important and worth analyzing about the state of comics and what it is that readers want and what publishers can do to appeal to a readership that's frankly tired of some of the tactics of the big three, if you will. So for me, this is coming from uh, a David Harper article. David Harper is the man behind Sketched and the Off Panel, I think it's called, podcast,
Correct. Yep.
which is really good. I just heard his interview with Christina Merkler, who is the person behind Lunar. He wrote an article, David Harper did, about Microlines in reference to Energon, Ultimate, and Absolute, and talked about what it's like on the ground for retailers who are selling these books and why they're working so well. So we're going to get into all of that. We're going to talk about why we think they're working, what we're loving about them, which of them are our favorites so far, but also some of our fears and what we worry could derail what feels like the biggest success that any of these three companies have seen in a really long time. We've got Cale.
What's up, hot dogs?
Marco.
Let's go, pals. Legion.
Tyler.
Happy Saturday, guys.
And I'm Sean. Thank you for being here, whether you are live with us or in the future. Really appreciate you hanging out on this Saturday morning or evening or afternoon or whatever it is in your neck of the woods. Make sure you smash that like button if you enjoy what we do. That's a great way to start things off. Yeah, we're gonna get right into things because and I want to say up front, David Harper does tremendous work with Sketched. I got a subscription because I wanted to read this article. I love stuff like this, and it was well worth it. So if you are interested in reading the actual article itself, sketched.com, SKTCHD.com is where you can do that. You can read like a snippet of it without a subscription, but if you want to read the rest, you've got to subscribe.
In the comic book sphere, there's not as many journalists as there used to be. And Harper's definitely on that actual like journalism side of the comic book fandom.
Hey, Super Will Tendo says, good morning, pals. Finally catching my first live. Good to see you, Super Will Tendo. That's a great name. I like that.
Careful, you might get sued by Nintendo.
No, he's completely different. Will Tendo.
Oh, sure.
So everybody here, whether you're listening to us, whether you're on the podcast right now, has read books from each of these lines, basically. And I think a big reason for that, a big reason why everybody has come to the table for these books is the fact that audiences are a little bit tired of the same old stuff. And even though at least speaking to Absolute and even Energon, all three of them are essentially stories being told with the same characters, in a shared space, a shared universe. It's the same ideas, but it's just a different presentation. It's a different presentation, and it's got less continuity. Like, yeah, Ultimate and Absolute spawn based on stuff that happens in mainline, But as we saw, they quickly pivoted away from dealing with any of that at all.
It's only there to set the stage. It's not the actual play that's happening. Yeah.
And I think that was super effective. I mean, the original Ultimates line, to my knowledge, had absolutely no connection whatsoever, which is just as good. But for me, I kind of like the fact that these lines started with some connective tissue, because it makes it feel like an extension of what I love so much, but getting to create its own sandbox.
I'm going to thank the MCU for this, actually. um, I think out of anything the MCU has done in the past decade, normalizing what a multiverse is and making that understandable has permeated pop culture. Everything has a multiverse now. So I think it allows the idea like, oh, this is a side universe, a multi-universe that everyone can kind of just eat, they can take that pill a little easier. Whereas, like Ultimate Spider-Man, when it originally came out, the original, it just started. Like it didn't need to justify itself in the context of another book.
Please.
Sorry, like to say that, because people are more familiar with it, you can come from an outside perspective and be more easily or more quickly integrated.
I think 15 years ago, the idea of like the DC multiverse and the idea of multiverses in general is probably confusing for anyone outside of comics and getting into comics. So just that idea is a little more digestible now because it's a little more common in pop culture.
I think that's a good point with regards to people coming in, but I think that volume is smaller, and because within the space of comics that's existed for a while, and if anything, I feel like the people who are already in the fold, who are already activated, I think they understand that. So for them, it becomes how do you make that universe feel distinct enough or compelling enough to make you want to pick it up alongside your 616, your DC mainline type thing. For me, it feels like the long term planning is what has been most palpable or most realized. When Skybound announced the Energon stuff, the fact that things were kept secret for 2+ years was that first Void Rivals issue was kept secret was incredible. Like the suspense of that, and I feel like that feels like stuff that you guys have brought up in the past with Secret Wars and Empire
Invasion,
Secret
Invasion, yeah,
where that was kept under wraps, and the reveal of that paid off for individuals, where this paid off for individuals at the inception of a universe.
I also think like using the main universe in the cases of Absolute and Ultimate as sort of the gateway into these new universes gives it a weight that feels like it matters to the people who are already reading. Whereas, just dropping into the just dropping us into the Ultimate universe the first time was like fine as a gamble for Marvel, who were really suffering at the time, Marvel as a company. But now they need a reason to send the people who are already reading in another direction.
Storyline wise, it's always a new jumping on point, but there is an anchor to what people are actually reading and quote unquote care about, to kind of draw them to that instead of it just being, oh, it's just a separate thing I don't really need to really pay attention to.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a big reason for the success. But also, in the case of Marvel and DC, it's as close as we'll probably ever get in our lives to a clean slate. How often do you get to make Batman #1? DC and Marvel, for that matter, show a lot of restraint with how often they do a number one for their biggest characters. And they have to, because Batman number one has diminishing returns. Spider-Man number one has diminishing returns. And so being able to say, not only is this Batman number one, but it's Batman with a clean slate. When was the last time we had Batman with a clean slate? I guess you'd have to go back to year one to get a Batman story from the ground that's definitive, that then builds up the way that this does. That's insane that they have that opportunity.
One of the things I always fascinates me when the YouTube comments come through, and we got it on one of the more recent videos we posted about should Marvel reboot their universe. It's like how many people actually like it with Spider-Man or like big characters, they want to read from the beginning. It's a weird mindset that I've seen a lot of people have where it's like, well, Spider-Man's hard to get into because I have to read from the 60s and onwards. And that doesn't compute with me. But I do see that opinion a lot. And I don't know if that's people coming from like TV and manga where that's what just they're used to. You got to start from the beginning.
Or even books.
Or yeah, sure, books. Yeah, you don't start Game of Thrones in, at Song of Storms.
Yeah.
Maybe you shouldn't start right now anyway. The new book is still taking forever. But I just think that these, what did you call them? Microlines? Is that what David Harper called them?
Yeah.
It does give that ability to be like, okay, I don't have to spend so much time. I can just jump right in. It's different than a new Spider-Man number one or different than a new Batman number one because it is a clean slate entirely.
And I think that's going to be my biggest worry is you've brought these people.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay. Is that longevity is not going to be sustainable. The number one, the launch, the microline is good to get people into the fold, but I think to that point, you need to educate people on the comfortability of jumping in later, down the line, when Transformers is at issue 70, when you have a G.I. Joe, 15, 35, whatever. And I think that has to be an education piece because you can't trust current readers who are so used to a new number one coming out to pick up that book. Sean's point of diminishing returns stands, and that continues through, I guess, depending on the issue, right? 100 as opposed to a 54. But yeah, that would be a worry. And Sean, for the clean slate, do you consider the absolute Batman a clean slate for Batman? Like, is that Batman?
Yes, of course. I think I understand what you mean,
Yeah.
but yes, it is, because even though, like, in my mind, the way I see it, right now you could buy Batman Full Moon. You could buy, any number of Black Label books or any number of Earth ones or whatever, right? And they're all, a new Batman or a different Batman than mainline. Why I think this is so clean, why this is such a legitimate clean slate, is that this doesn't feel like Elseworlds. It feels like they're building up a meaningfully unique world and universe in which a version of Batman now fits in, but there's a commitment to telling stories in this space, a shared universe space, in the long term. And that is materially different than anything I can think of. I mean, you could look at like Dark Knights of Steel, but even something like that feels very Elseworlds. And maybe it's the tether to mainline, but for some reason, to me, this feels like, and it could just be the language, it feels like Batman. I buy this. It does. I don't get Elseworlds vibes.
I think there's something to be said about modernizing these characters, and their origins. and finding themes that are relatable to us now in 2024 versus 1939 when they were introduced.
You have an ability to write that from the get, instead of having to reimagine and recontextualize what it was at its inception, decades ago. And you can kind of just be like, all right, I'll keep the archetypal bits there, because the Absolute Batman, as an example, there's a lot of change there. But archetypally, I don't know if that's a word. It is still Batman. It's still got the costume. It still has batarangs. He still is Bruce Wayne. But you can play with the formula a bit that you can't really. But it also still feels like Batman.
I want to say what's up to Sonder, Steve Matthews. How you doing, Steve? Leatrix, good to see you. Izzy's Issues, happy you're here. Kyle, what's up, Kyle? Dark Dragon X7, how you doing? Harris, good to see you, buddy. William Cobb, what's going on, William? And I want to say hello and get well soon to Atomic Hound, who is under the weather, sick as a dog, as it were. And Marley, who is recovering from eye surgery. We talked a little bit about that last week. Marley says that they said it went well. So I'm glad to hear that, Marley. Happy you're on the mend and happy that you are here with us. Since there are nearly 70 of you here with us getting started this morning, I do want to take a quick break from this conversation to trap you all into hearing about a favor that we have to ask from you. So we put together a feedback form that we need feedback for. We need to hear from you guys about what you're liking, what you're not liking, what you want to see us do more of, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we went through a lot of effort to get this done for you all. So if you could do me a personal favor, I just shared it in the comment section of the chat, and there will be one in the comment section for those of you future listeners. Please, please, please take this and respond to it. It will take you 5 minutes or less. That's a Comics Pals guarantee. If it takes you more than that, you're a slow typer. Please respond to it. It helps us out a ton. And yeah, we really appreciate everybody who takes the time to do it. It is a big, I know it's a big ask. You can do that in the margins of listening to us, or you can do it after the show. Just take a few minutes and do something for your pals. We will love you forever. Well, we already do, but you know. Okay, back to the conversation. The other thing about these microlines, as it were, is how small they are. That is a big, big factor. Every time we've talked about Absolute, every time we talked about Ultimates, even X-Men, we talked about what? Keeping them contained, small. With X-Men, what do we say? 5 titles, no more than 5? With Absolute, that's been our narrative because it gets unwieldy after a while. And you look at how the X line exploded, and now it's like, well, what? I don't want all this. I didn't ask for 12 different books, a new book releasing every single month. It's too unwieldy. You can't grab hold of that. But when you've got Absolute, which is at the current moment and will be until I want to say March, just 3 titles, 1 title per week, and then 1 week where you're not getting one. That's beautiful. Ultimates is 4 titles, one a week. You get 1 Ultimates book a week.
Even when I talked to Kirkman at New York Comic Con, with the Energon universe, the G.I. Joe side has had a lot of little miniseries recently. Destro, Cobra, Scarlet, Duke. But he kind of stressed going forward, it's just going to be G.I. Joe, Transformers, and Void Rivals. There's no real need to expand past that at the moment because that's a good sweet spot for them. And again, that's 3. It's almost like they get an off week every month.
Also, I think that way, with these miniseries, they also can plant little bits of information that you can always go back to.
And I think they also know, like, money's a little tight for people right now. And there's a lot of cutting that people have to do on their pull lists. Sean did it last week, or last Pals Pulls, literally live on the show. He was cutting up books. You can watch it. It didn't actually
Whoa.
happen. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. But having the ability to just have core titles, and then that allows people to just actually get those core titles and not have to worry about which core titles to get. They can literally just kind of ground themselves in one of these Microlines and get everything for a reasonable amount of money.
$20.
Yeah.
$20 to read all of Ultimates. Or the Ultimate Universe. That is a big deal. And I think it's hard to understate, or overstate rather. It's hard to overstate how big of a deal that is. You can really be as choosy as you want to be right now. I've never felt less like I had to follow specific books to keep up with the respective universes, because Marvel and DC's universes are just wherever they're at. It's just, who cares anymore? They don't care. They don't seem to care. But the Microlines, it's like, yeah, shit, I'm buying 3 out of 4 of the Ultimates. I'm 3 for 3 on Absolute, and it's gonna stay that way because I love all these titles. And it's easy for me to keep up with the entire story for a very small price. Whereas in the bigger universes, there is no entire story. What is the entire story? There's nothing happening.
X-Men barely has its own X-Men story going on.
Right.
It's 2 books, really. And I think Absolute is a good point, too, because it's 3 books right now. You could read them for, 4 months, and then you're ingrained in the story. You're ingrained in the Absolute universe because you've been reading it for months. And then they're going to release 2 more books. So now it's like they got you hooked already.
But do we want those universes to be sprawling in order to be full realized universes?
I don't think they have to be.
Hmm.
Because to enjoy a universe, you don't have to know every nook and cranny of it. Having that little bit of mystery in, each section is what makes it fun. It's that work of doing, 2 plus 2, and you say equals 4, versus them telling us that 2 plus 2 is 4.
I think that Absolute has already, with these announcements, it's they have to be careful. I definitely think they have to be careful. I think they've announced, what are we at? We've got the 3 we already have: Absolute, Green Lantern, Flash, and Martian Manhunter. So that's 6. That's still not crazy. Justice League, DC, I always think about the number 7. But 7 is it.
Agreed. Yeah, because Dennis Camp mentioned on Twitter that, he was offered, the big ones are off the table, so that's why he went with Martian Manhunter, because they have to kind of hit all those Justice League characters. I think 6 is a good number, but then I feel like there should be a team book, eventually. Maybe that's a year 2 thing. But then I'm like, all right, at what point is that knocking over the dominoes at that point? And then you get, how many years until we get, I don't know, Absolute Animal Man or something,
Go ahead, Marco.
Sorry, to that point, I would almost say that they would plan not to have a team book. Like, keep this individualized, so that way the connections. I like what Cale said. The 2 plus 2 equals 4 versus telling you that they exist in the world, but give nods to them to provide that mystery, to feed the imagination of the people who want to know more about the Absolute Universe and don't get that team book, because then it's confirmed. Yeah, for sure they exist here. Yeah, Superman's gonna be walking down Metropolis and comes across Absolute Poison Ivy or whatever the fuck, right? Like, at that point, you maybe diminish some of that mystery. So I think keeping them contained makes the most narrative sense, I think.
I hope they don't do a Justice League. I've come to the conclusion for myself that I don't need to see that. The biggest thing for me with these lines has been my level of ability to believe that there is a creative plan. And that is something that I have no confidence in at Marvel at all, outside of Ultimate, and some confidence in DC, because All In is an overarching thing. But I don't want to see what feel like cash grabby, let's do everything the same initiatives. Look at the difference. Like, yes, we have the Ultimates. That was one of the earliest titles we got. It feels so different to me from Avengers, and it's not even the Avengers, it's the Ultimates. That's not the same thing. And they've got different mission statements. There is an end goal for the Ultimates, for the Ultimate Universe, a point at which things are promised to change. It's baked in. It's baked in already. That's compelling creatively. This endless track with no end in sight, no plans for years out, I'm not interested. We already get that.
As much as we kind of bash on the month to month, storytelling device, Dark Dragon X7 makes a good point here. The Ultimate Universe does have an automatic timetable, with the big maker event being the big target afterwards. So it's definitely going to change.
But then does that? Oh, go ahead.
Well, and that's what the universe was built around. Like, we got that in Ultimate Invasion. I would argue that we have that with Darkseid in the Absolute Universe. It's just, I think we just haven't had the time to, they haven't laid it out, 13 months or whatever. There is an end to this conflict at some point, but when and where?
And the end to the conflict doesn't have to mean the end of the plans that they have in place. It doesn't have to mean the end of quality storytelling. It doesn't have to mean that now we're in Monster of the Week territory. We all lived through the OG Ultimate Universe, and everybody who read it can acknowledge it got to a point where not only was it worse than mainline, but it was like, what the fuck is even happening anymore? What happened to the X-Men? What are we doing? The original creatives had left, who were the cream of the crop at that time. Look at the original creators for the first 5 years of Ultimate storytelling, and look at the legends in comics of the last 20 years. It's the same people. Once they left, and you started getting, I'm not going to name any names, but you started getting people on these books, I don't even know if you would have gotten a shot mainline, let alone how you got to Ultimates. And it became something that it wasn't intended to be. And that is the point at which we can never get. They need to pull the plug before we see that.
It became a condensed version of what mainline comics was. It's like it happened in a hyperbolic time chamber. Everything just happened quicker. The stories became confusing. The characterizations became weird. The quality dipped. And yeah, we can't do that again.
Is that not short-term thinking, though? Because then we have 2 years locked in for DC, let's say, at least that we know of, for these creators, for the story that they have, the maker events coming, whatever happens after that. If we don't want to have that repetition, means that we have to be confident with an endpoint that dissolves that respective universe for Ultimate, let's say, for the Ultimates, let's say. Then was this an effectual cash grab? Becomes my worry. Was this short-term thinking that was well thought out and planned, and 5 years was the time that we gave, and now we're thinking of the event in that perspective? And
So,
go ahead,
please.
I was just saying, time's gonna tell.
Yeah. But I kind of think the best thing they could do is end it earlier than later. You know, if they get to the end of Ultimates, they beat the Maker, and, you know, whatever happens is going to happen. You know, what is their long-term plan there? And if it's not anything that they can reliably keep up, Dennis Camp level quality, cut it off. And I would say that is good. What did you say? Good short-term thinking.
Yeah.
Because even if it is a cash grab, we got good stories out of it. I would argue it's the right kind of cash grab.
Mm.
Yeah, I'll take a cash grab that's driven by Scott Snyder and Joshua Williamson and people who are creatively invested and want to do the best work that they can. If they're driving the truck, sure, whatever. Like we said, the original Ultimate line went bad about 5 years or so in, give or take. That might be individual. New 52, similar idea. So clearly, a lot of times, these initiatives don't have a long shelf life anyway, for whatever reason. We don't know who's going to be in charge of DC in 5 years. We don't know what Scott Snyder's long-term plans are creatively. We don't know any of those things. So if it's a question of let it go until it sucks or cut it off while it's still good, I say cut it off while it's still good. Now, that is not a business strategy. Businesses don't do things like that. And that's what sucks. But if it were up to me, and I would imagine if it were up to the creatives, that's what they would do. But what is that point? The Ultimate Universe is united around a theme. What is the theme? The theme is that the world before us, the people before us, left us a world that sucks, and the young people have to fix it. They have to live in the world that was made for them and find a way to do better. Their futures were taken. If the Maker is defeated, what is the driving narrative now? If there is not an answer to that, then the time is up. If there is an answer to that, creatively driven, then I want to see it.
Does that mean rebuilding the world in the, in the image of the youth? And then what conflict does that bring? That's interesting.
Yep. Exactly. I'm all in as long as it remains creatively driven.
Don't want to see absolute metal men
No.
Well,
squeeze out every last drop.
I don't want to see absolute metal men red band. I think is an even more offensive. Well, absolute metal men, sure, modernize the metal men. I think that's great. Don't give me bullshit cash grabs like red band.
Crisis on Infinite Metal Men.
I think a major part of why these lines have succeeded beyond the size, because I think size is a huge factor, but it's also quality. And including Energon, every one of these books is critically and commercially viable. We've got the ICV2 Top 50 Comics. ICV2 is a website that publishes, they do a lot of stuff. But one of the things they do that we love is the sales rankings. It's point of sale data that comes from only around 3,000 comic stores worldwide.
Oh,
Sorry? Oh, no. I'm sorry. I'm mistaken. It's 125 stores out of 3,000. So it's not a ton of stores by any means. So, yes, it's not random. Yes, it's a small size. We know that. We get it. Move forward.
But it is worldwide.
It is stores that use Comic Hub.
Yeah,
It's stores that use
platform.
their system. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And this is the data that comes from the time between October 6th and November 2nd. So those 5 weeks. Absolute Batman is the #1 bestseller. That should surprise absolutely no one. Absolute Wonder Woman.
No one.
Yeah. Absolute Wonder Woman, 2nd bestseller. Ultimate Spider-Man 10, 3rd bestseller. Transformers 13, #5. DC All-In Special, #10. So that right there, you've got these Microlines pretty much dominating the top 10. Oh, Ultimate's 5, #7.
Yeah.
So through what's that? 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of the 10 are a part of the Microline in a direct way. All-In Special was the lead into DC's version of that. So that's a pretty successful sample size for these lines.
What number of Transformers was that?
That was 13.
Yeah.
So 13, and it's number 6. You said
5.
Number 5.
that's still that's what jumped out to me the most. Like Absolute Wonder Woman and Batman had #1s, so that's definitely going to help them. But the fact that we're 13 issues into Transformers, and it's number 5,
Yeah,
out of the top 10, like that's a huge thing as well. That just shows people are craving an accessible universe that starts from the ground up with good creatives.
and also just good comics.
Yep.
I don't give a damn about Transformers for real. Like I don't care. I like the movie. But the fact that I can get that book and it's pretty good month to month, and it's got good art and it's connected to something bigger that's fun, it's like, all right, yeah, sure, I'm on the hook for this.
And we know next month G.I. Joe is going to be on that list, no matter what. Probably top.
100%. Yep.
It's probably going to be #1, #1 or
Guaranteed.
#2, because, I guess it could be #3. Absolute Superman, Absolute Batman, G.I. Joe. Those are the top 3 next month.
Ooh.
That's
How
my
much-
call.
Yes, your call, Sean?
Yeah,
We
with
got-
G.I.
we're
Joe
gambling-
being
we're
#1.
gambling again. What have we learned on this show? You two, Jesus.
I mean, it seems like common sense to me. But these books are selling well. Everybody is reading them because they're good. I don't want to move past that point yet, because the quality of the books is so much higher than the average book you get from at least the big 2, that for me, it makes me go, oh, so wait, the formula to selling comics is to take creators who people want to read stories from and putting them on books that people care about. Wow, that's magic.
I think it also helps that there's architects to these lines. That mainline books don't really have the benefit of having. Sure, they have editors, but these have creative architects. Snyder is the creative architect of what the Absolute line is. Whoever started the Ultimate line, it's been rumored it might have been Cates with Hickman. We've only really seen Hickman deal with that, but now Dennis Camp's kind of dealing with the wider scheme of things. But they're all creatives that are dealing with this. It's a small line that can kind of exist in this creative space that is run by these writers and artists. And then we know that's the case for Energon. So I just think that because they're so small too, it allows it to be controlled by creators, because it doesn't need as much editorial oversight.
Shepherding.
Shepherding, yeah, that's good. That's a good word. Which makes it a quality comic.
I mean, you get creators that are good and you put them on books you want to sell, they tend to sell. And maybe there are too many books to go around to do that across the board. Marvel publishes an ass load of comics. You can't clone Jonathan Hickman or Kelly Thompson or Dennis Camp or whomever. There are so many books that you have to assign books to creators who might not necessarily be, the cat's meow or whatever. Like, that hurts the bigger line. when you have to put out books because you have to fill quotas, and that necessitates pulling from not the cream of the crop and putting them on these titles, it suffers as a result. There are only so few creators who I'm actually compelled to see what they have to say right now.
Yeah. And I think we're seeing that with like the X-Men.
Yeah.
You know, there's not one ancillary X title that I'm excited about the creative team.
And I think there's a gamble that by using the X-Men line and the name and the weight there, that of the good books that maybe get produced from there, you can create some of those names. But I think that's a risky play if that is the play at all. And especially when you come for when it's a line that people were just kind of frustrated about towards the end and you needed a resurgence around. I think the strategy around using the names or using creators for volume as opposed to for quality is detrimental in the long run.
I think the X-Men line is a great example to compare to these microlines. It's the clear difference between creator led versus IP led.
Yeah.
It's they're like you're talking about these like newer creators and lesser known creators in the X-Men books. Yes, by design. It is so they could. It's not about that. It's about Storm on the cover. It's about this is a Phoenix book. It's not creative led. It is character based. It is, and which I think Dan Buckley has mentioned, right? Talking about more character based stuff.
I've never heard him say what you
Okay,
just
all right.
said.
I might just pull that one out of my ass. It's gonna hurt later. But it's clear that there's a quality difference too, based on these character IP driven books versus Absolute, Energon, and Ultimate.
And it's a problem that's probably never going to go away. Marvel's not going to pull their line back, but it's frustrating when I know that if you said, okay, look, there are only going to be 5 X-Men books and they're all going to be written and drawn by people that you guys, and by you guys I mean like readers, love to death, your favorite creators, that would work. I know it would work. We've had it already. It works.
Or people who have a compelling story that will drive a narrative.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like Stephanie Phillips, for example. I think Stephanie Phillips is great. I think she's super talented. She's writing Phoenix. That's cool. It wasn't her idea. It wasn't her concept that Phoenix go to space and whatever. That was what she was handed, and she had to pitch based on the framing that she was given. And yeah, that can produce great comics, and it has many, many times in the past. That's cool. But for me right now, where I'm at, I don't need to buy. You guys heard Pal's Pulse. I have 60 something books on my pull list per month. I don't need more books like that. I don't. If I don't like it, I'm dropping it. And I don't care, respectfully, what the editors want. I want what the creators want. Sink or swim. Grimm is the best book that Stephanie Phillips has. What a coincidence that it's also the book that she is the creative driver of, and nobody is telling her what to do.
It's just her and Flaviano. There's no set limits for that book. That's why she can write a pegging scene in it. It's just that can't happen in other books because and that doesn't. I don't want to say it stifles creativity. It's a different type of creativity. I think there's also a skill you need to be able to write within those boundaries that a mainline Big Two book gives you. And like you said, Sean, that leads to some good books that have come out of that, some great books that have come out of that. But I think just from what I read as I guess I can call myself a veteran comic book reader,
At this point.
I want to have something that is wholly the child and baby of the creative team.
Like I can, in school, I can write a pretty decent Shakespeare essay. but ask me to write an essay about the differences between the themes and episodes of Common Rider, and you got an award-winning episode
Thesis.
thesis. Thank you.
Because you care about it more.
That's
you're,
it.
You're as a writer, as a creator, you're more invested in it. As opposed to a Phoenix story set in the boundaries that were given to you, that'll just be given to somebody else, 10 issues down the line. And whether or not what you created in it might not matter.
Yep.
Welcome to Peter Palmer. Hi, Comics Pals. Fairly new lurker here since the summer? Question mark. Usually catch the replays first time live chatting. Liking these industry discussions, keep them going, and he throws us some spidey webs. Thwip thwip, baby.
Ooh, sticky.
Thanks, Peter Palmer. This is a great opportunity to say thank you and hello to all 100 plus of you that are watching us live. You guys are fantastic. We posted the Google form for some feedback. Please, please, please take time out of your day to do that for us. I also want to point out, we've been doing this for 45 minutes. I haven't seen not one super chat. Super chats are open. What's up? Let me see those super chats roll in. We got a whole lot of you here. We are rocking right now. Let's keep the conversation going. What are retailers? Go ahead.
The problem is where our opinions are so fire, they don't have anything to argue with us about.
Right. It's better when we are arguing because then they want to jump in the fray.
That's
someone
it. The
say something
conversation's too
controversial.
correct.
I really like Paul and Amazing Spider-Man. Zeb Wells' run is great. There we go. Throw that in
Watch
there.
him roll in.
What are retailers saying about these microlines? Well, since they're a success, obviously retailers are happy. Pre-orders were through the roof for all the Absolute books, way higher than what those books are selling mainline. So what I mean by that is Absolute Batman is sold way more than regular Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman. You guys get it. Ultimate Spider-Man sells way more than almost every other book in the top 10 whenever before the Absolute books released. It was like from 1 to 2 it was selling 66% more or some ridiculous number like that. David Harper says the following. A good example of that came in conversation with a retailer. They noted how sizable the divide was between Ultimate Spider-Man and the rest of the Ultimate line, somewhat questioning the impact in the process. In response, I asked them how Ultimate Black Panther and Ultimates are doing compared to Marvel's mainline Black Panther and Avengers titles. They looked it up, and the answer was much, much better. That was largely true amongst everyone I talked to. One shop even said Ultimate Black Panther was selling 3 times as much as the most recent mainline Black Panther did. That is not uncommon. That's insane.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is probably some research throughout the year because I'm like, oh, what's 3 times over 0? There's no Black Panther book right now.
Well, you said most recent.
Sure, yeah, but still, it's huge.
Yeah, that's a huge number, and that speaks to like maybe Ultimate Black Panther is the worst selling, which I'm sure it is, of the new Ultimates books. But the fact that it's in that line, just that alone, gives it enough of a boost to outsell mainline Black Panther by 3 times, at least in this particular store. That's brilliant. That's huge. Black Panther can't even keep a book on the stands right now, mainline.
Did he compare Ultimate X-Men to X-Men adjectiveless? No. Okay, I'd be curious about that, honestly.
Well, we can look at the sales charts for that. Adjectiveless on ICV2's sales chart is at number 11. So it's not even in the top 10. Whereas I'm looking for Ultimate X-Men. Ultimate X-Men was number 29.
Oof.
So that's actually really bad. And Uncanny X-Men is the 4th best-selling book on this list. So,
like we said,
To me, that's flagship. Uncanny.
Sure.
X-Men.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So for it to be 4, that's where it should be. But yeah, these books are selling well. People want to buy them. It's like rising tide raises all boats type of thing. But I want to stick on what it is that retailers are saying. So here's a back to David Harper. Each of those aspects have been discussed ad nauseum in the conversation about the success of these microlines, but there are a few that are comparatively underreported. One is how much easier it is to promote these lines. Comics marketing is in a painful place, especially when you factor in the deluge of titles hitting shops each week. Because these lines are so condensed, though, the publisher, its marketers and creators, and retailers can pitch a small group of connected titles rather than a sea of individual books, something that's made everyone's lives a little easier. And because of that, there have been some truly inspiring marketing efforts surrounding these lines that makes a real difference.
Think about being able to be like, all right, here's say you're talking to your friend or whatever, or put yourself in the shoes of a comic book store owner. Here's 4 Marvel books that all kind of exist in the same world that are telling different stories in different genres, that stand by themselves, but you can see some interconnectivity. You can pitch the Ultimate Universe. Try pitching the Spider-Man universe right now. Amazing, Spider-Boy, Spider Society, Chasm. Like you can't pitch that as a interconnected line as simply as you can Ultimates or Absolute or Energon.
And I think that's, not to let them off the hook because they're massive companies with marketing machines, but I also think that's got to be some of the reason we don't see the companies advertise these mainline books, and creators have to step in and say, I'm doing this, starting with this issue, follow me here and watch what I do. Because if, say DC does that for Superman, DC has to answer how they got to this point. Whereas, say Mark Waid doesn't necessarily have to. Mark Waid just says, look, this is a jumping on point. This is where I started. It's me. You know what to expect.
I think it's also an ROI issue. Why am I going to invest on these books if I can potentially expect they're not going to give me the return that an ultimate will, or even a mainline Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman will. Maybe there's more value to those than the other books.
Yeah, I think, putting marketing budget behind the next in many, many, many Doctor Strange stories is like, all right, are more people looking for this? Yeah, you put those advertisements in the comics themselves, which is what Marvel and DC do, to say to, let's say me, hey Sean, I don't know if you knew this, but Doctor Strange he was dead. Now he's back. Yay. And then I can choose whether or not I care. But I don't know if spending the money to get a television commercial to promote Doctor Strange #1 is the best use of your money. On the other hand, when you have an entire line that is changing and committing to an initiative like All In and Absolute, putting that on television, putting that on AEW, that makes a lot of sense.
Because you're investing in a line, in a bigger idea. Marketing with comics is tough too, because think about how they're sold. What do they solicit 3 months in advance? Do you market it then to get it for final order cutoff, which means nothing to most people who read comics?
Yeah.
FOC is nebulous. I guarantee you more than half the amount of comic book readers even know what that is.
And that's a great point, because if you advertise something, the expectation is to have someone go out and buy it now.
Yep. But then you're already dependent on those stores having purchased it 3 months ago to meet that demand. So there's always gambling when it comes to comic shops, and sure, there's data that can help, inform those decisions. But it
Yeah.
is tricky from a marketing standpoint. It's very different.
Edna McNabola is just not a name I've seen before. Welcome. Says any other comic IPs that could benefit from the ultimate absolute treatment? Nope. I don't think so.
I would have. This is just a me thing, but what Image is doing with their Universal monsters, I wish that was more interconnected.
Huh.
That's just a personal thing.
Frankenstein with Dracula.
They do it in the theme parks constantly.
Feels like a cereal mascot.
Yeah.
Situation
Oh
you're
wait,
looking
okay. You
for.
give me a Captain Crunch comic, Ultimate Captain Crunch. I'm into it. Absolute Count Chocula. I'm down. So yeah, I'm also interested in those IPs.
Monster mashup.
I think there has to be a groundswell of interest in order to make something like this work. I also don't think that lines of comics in the traditional sense that we're talking about it right now works everywhere else because it necessitates a shared universe. It's not just that they're smaller lines, it's also that they are shared universes with characters who we already know and care about. I don't think that you can apply this same, like, for example, and this example's in the sketched article. Oni Press has the new Nacelverse or whatever, which is like all these various like TV shows and toy lines that are defunct, like the Bikers from Mars, the Biker Mice from Mars,
Oh
and the
yeah.
Right.
Street Sharks and all that jazz. And that's its own universe now, but nobody cares about that shit because there's not a groundswell of interest in that. And they also didn't go out and buy the services of Jonathan Hickman and whoever else. Like, it requires certain things you have to be able to do in order to make it work.
Yeah, and I would also argue they're not built on ideas that you can distill in the same way Absolute, Ultimate, and Energon have. Because I'm thinking of like the Power Rangers, and like that does have a long trail, but the comics only recently started, and that's basically what they're doing anyway.
I posit Archie. A couple years back, they did a whole revamp of.
Dog, hey dog,
Yep.
that was 10 years ago.
We're
Was
talking
that
about
that long?
Yeah.
the
With Fiona
Brian K.
Staples?
Vaughn, Fiona Staples
Uh-huh.
one.
Yeah. Was
Dude,
it?
that
No
was
way.
a while ago. Yeah, man.
That was not a couple
Holy
years
shit.
You
ago.
were living a different
Well,
life at that point, buddy.
Yeah. The point stands in that it's a long-standing comic book. It has its own built-in audience. The success of things like Afterlife with Archie, the werewolf stuff, the vampire pieces, like that had a gimmick attached to it, but it sold well for what it was. And then you got the new launch of a modernized Archie and Friends and the stories associated. But I think that they went too far with it, or they didn't maintain a certain level of quality, because then at the same time you had the Archie show and its respective spin-offs, and that kind of had a jump the shark moment.
I wonder if we're thinking about this the wrong way too. Could we think of a world where Ultimate X-Men becomes its own thing? Like, sure, it exists within the Ultimates line, but does it splinter off and kind of do its own thing with its own interconnected story that's separate? Or is this just repeating the sins of the past?
That's
Yeah.
mainline.
Yeah.
Well, and that's essentially what happened the last time.
Yeah.
Like they weren't connected.
That's exactly what happened last time.
Yeah.
Is that what led to Ultimate X, where it was like, oh, we're going to explain the mutant gene? Yeah. Oof, that was rough.
Sean, let me pitch you something.
Hmm.
Absolute Days of Our Lives.
All in. I'm all in. Dude, you give me absolute fucking passions and I'm all in. I love a good soap opera. They're great. By the way,
just read JSA.
Right. Uh, I'd love to see this treatment applied to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'd love to see, like, I just don't think that, I don't think it would work. I think that the alchemy that makes this work in the three spaces we're seeing it at, with, and you could even sort of throw Ghost Machine in the mix, just because, because it's a small line of comics with a dedicated group of creators that are the same people, and it's going to be the same people, and they have specific stories that they're trying to tell. So you could even include them kind of in this. But I think if we're talking about IP, it has to be an IP that has
Yeah.
a groundswell of interest. Transformers gets big movies. G.I. Joe gets big movies. People care right now.
I think it's more, I think for Ghost Machine in particular, it's more about those creators.
Yeah,
It's absolute Jeff Johns.
absolutely.
You're not wrong, actually. And then Giant Generator is just ultimate recommender.
Yeah. So back to the article. David Harper follows up. He says, needless to say, retailer sentiment surrounding these microlines is high. Each shop I talked to is thrilled about what they've seen so far, but most agreed that for these efforts to continue to succeed, the micro part cannot become macro. The bigger these lines get and the faster they get there, the more concerned retailers are about the potential of each. Thankfully, most publishers have shown admirable restraint so far. Energon has topped out at 4 titles, while Marvel has been positively tantric compared to its usual self when it comes to the Ultimate line's growth. But even the slightest cracks could bring unease into the lives of retailers. Absolute Flash and Absolute Green Lantern being on the horizon before that line's first titles had debuted is enough for shops to be a bit leery about DC's plans. Some even wondered if 5 titles would be too much for this idea to be sustainable. Time will tell. But shops are encouraged by what they've seen from these efforts. Whether you're talking about the big guns like Energon and Ultimate, the growing Ghost Machine imprint, or the just launched Absolute Universe, shops have found something they can rely on here. That doesn't mean that will last forever, but at the very least, these microlines have proven that there's real value to giving top talents creative freedom, that making things more accessible for readers of all varieties can pay dividends, and that maybe, just maybe, less truly can be more. And those are lessons every publisher could stand to learn. I don't. Go ahead, Tyler.
I was gonna say, and like I said, with the way money is for people right now, monetarily it makes the most sense.
Without question. I think we said it when we talked about X-Men. Are there diminishing returns? Are you just splintering money when you have 12 books versus 5 that people really want? You take the 12, right? And you say, we're not going to do 12, we're just going to do 5. And we're going to have Storm on the X-Men. And we're going to have Jean Grey on a team. And we're going to have, and everybody's going to be on these groups. And then Wolverine gets his own book, and that's about it. Are you not able to take the money that you're making from the 12 and get that in 5? Because people are motivated to buy. Everybody buying a Jean Grey book will buy an X-Men book if Jean Grey's on the team. So, go ahead.
Sorry, but numerically that only happens if you also don't have people who can afford more. That only assumes you're buying one book. That only assumes that you're buying a set block. Like there are people who can buy more books, and I would argue, Sean, you're one of those people that can buy more than one book per line. So by having you and giving you the option, you are spreading that pool, but not because you're diminishing the value of a unified X team, but well they got you to spend more.
Can and will are 2 different points.
But for how long?
Yeah.
I did it for all the number 1s. I'm already dropping X-Men. I dropped Nyx. What else have I dropped? I want to drop Storm. I want to drop Phoenix. I'm not gonna do this. I'm not.
It's nice to know you're
And
keeping Dazzler though, Sean. That's good. Good to hear.
I never even bought it.
Oh damn. Okay.
I didn't even buy that. They have lost my faith. And I think if it was just 5 books, people like me would say, well, I don't give a damn about Jean Grey's solo adventures, but I sure do love seeing her interactions with the X-Men, so I'm happy buying that comic book. It's the same exact strategy that was successful with the beginning of the Krakoan era. It works. They already proved it.
It works for the immediate in comics. I agree. I think right now what we're seeing though in X-Men is an investment in characters that they're doing because they want it, like Cale's mentioned it, they want a Storm book on the stands when she's in a movie. They want a Phoenix book on the stands that they can pick up at a Barnes & Noble because she's in the movies. So I think there is a clear investment going on in the characters that is antithetical to what we've been used to with X-Men. So in the immediate, we're not getting what we want. We're not getting what I think works for comics. But if you expand outwards, I can see why they're doing. Do I agree? No. But I can see it.
But I would also argue it's a bigger problem that Marvel exacerbates as a publishing line. You know, look at any number of, you know, any given week at a comic book shop and look at how many Marvel books have flooded the stands and who's buying them. You know, Marco brings up the point of there are people who can afford more of, say, an X-Men. It's that thing that, you know, we talk about sometimes about that Dan Didio said. They will chase those white whales of people who will buy absolutely every book on the stands to get the dollar without thinking of the longevity of keeping a core reasonably sized group for longer term.
Or at the very least, those people who fall off the books make up the core, and as long as the amount of sales per the ancillary books subsist, then you keep them on the line.
Yeah, today, but I guarantee you that in 1 year, the X line will not look the way it does. I guarantee you that at least half of those books will be canceled due to low sales. I guarantee it. And you can already see it because I am staring at the sales figures right now. And we can look at it. This is verifiable data, baby.
Yep.
Uncanny X-Men, number 4. That's 4th on sales. That's beautiful. That's exactly where it should be. Wolverine, number 2, that's number 6 in sales. That's beautiful. X-Men, number 6 is number 11. Okay, that's fine. I think it should be higher. Exceptional X-Men number 2 is number 13. That's great. You don't see another X book until Mystique, which is 26th in sales.
That was number 1, yeah.
That was number 1.
Yeah.
Okay? X-Force number 4 is number 32 in sales. And then where else? X-Men number 5, Sentinels number 1, 39 in sales. Storm is not even on this list. Phoenix number 4, 44th in sales. That is dreadful. Already. It's October. This line started in July.
Yeah. As that wane and waxes, though, do you let go of Uncanny X-Men?
No, they just let go of
that's the
titles.
flagship.
Yeah.
Why? What are you talking about? Why would you let it go?
Right.
Yeah.
So they know that they have those people locked in.
It's more like they know that, oh, maybe Phoenix won't sell well monthly, but then we'll have a trade. And that's what we care about, just having a book.
For the ancillary amount.
If that's the strategy, do your worst. I'm saying that that's not smart from a financial standpoint and from a readership standpoint. It doesn't do you favors to have a line of 12 books when half of them aren't selling. That's not working.
It does not help the direct market at all.
No.
And it seems like an investment not for the direct market. Do you know what I mean? And you know, we've talked about the invisible hand of Feige kind of maybe, you know, controlling the puppet strings a bit here. But yeah, that definitely doesn't help the comic shops as much as, you know, Transformers that I think every comic shop has a poster of somewhere.
sure.
My local comic shop that I go to, All Yeah Comics in Harrison, New York, they have a Transformers Energon open close sign. Like they made one of those for comic shops, which is like genius.
Wow.
You know, that is a line creatively driven that is benefiting the comic shops, and then it's going to be a symbiotic relationship. Whereas X-Men and Marvel's only really caring about Marvel at that point. Everything else be damned.
Jay Sage with the 4.99 euro says, big fan, love the personalities, topics discussed, and the tangents you take. Keep up the good work, guys. Jay, thank you so much. I appreciate the fact that you love our personalities and our tangents, because that's really all we bring to the table.
Can confirm. I don't bring much else.
But looking at the chat, I see it. Chat is all saying the same thing. I don't see anyone happy about the amount of books that X Line is publishing. Look at this. Carl's collection. X Titles relaunch was way too much too fast. Lost me right out the gate. Cole, I'm always quality over quantity. Dan asked us, do you think the number of comics coming out dissuade new readers? Yes. Carl's collection. Adding multiple solo series immediately signaled to me that this is more of the same, not creatively driven. Brian, 12-ish. As someone who is not invested in the X stuff, any interest I have is completely rebuffed by the vast number of titles. It's too daunting a task to dive in. The people have spoken.
And I think that from a creative standpoint, from a readership standpoint, for sure. But I think you had whatever the number fours, you had number ones, you had number threes, etc. That to me, and that in my mind too, Marvel means X number of volume sold. Readership be damned, which I'm not saying is a good thing.
What did you just say?
Volume
sold, readership be damned. That isn't.
And that to me is the business aspect of Marvel's decision to publish and put out such high volume. I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think it's a good strategy for retaining readership. But the people are from what I see in the sales. That to me is just the people came for that.
You talking like a buckshot shotgun approach, right? You shoot a wide spread. Ooh, that sounds weird. It's too early for that. But you're gonna get, I guess, more damage to people's wallets in the long term, in the immediate, because there's so many books out. You're getting that money from so many different sources.
It's a bigger impact.
If you add up, number 39, number 40 something, number 17, it'll be more than everything else.
Yeah.
And I think Marvel has the luxury of that because they have money to be able to publish everything.
They can get that extra $5 from the person who can buy both X-Men and Dazzler.
I think that what we are seeing numbers wise, it's cold hard numbers, proves that strategy isn't working, and we are literally we're not even 6 months in. We're not even 6 months in.
Well,
these number ones aren't selling for shit.
But I think also it's the luxury of knowing that there are going to be those top 10, those top core that make up the bulk of what the sale is, and everything else is cents on the dollar.
Then why not expand the Ultimate line?
Well, I think to the point that you guys have been making, that we've been making over the course of the conversation, you want to contain that because it is going to be creatively driven. Yeah, I think you can abuse the main line at the moment and sort of curate and treat the Ultimate line well.
You have your cash cow that you can milk constantly, and then your prized pig, which you can show off.
Right.
Yep.
Dan Trudeau gave us a super chat. Thanks, Dan, for $5. He said there were 3 X books on the stands when I started in the 80s. Do you guys think that's the right level or too far pared back?
That's fine, man.
I don't know where this idea came from that we need so many books. Like, 3 is amazing. I love it.
Ray Mescalado says, I remember when Wheezy Simonson fretting in interviews back then about a third series being too much. This was about X Factor.
Yeah. Oh, would it
And,
be like Uncanny, New Mutants, X Factor? Hold on a second.
and I think X Factor only existed because the characters just became too many, and they just needed to like shove off some of the original characters, like Cyclops and stuff, had to be sent off somewhere.
And I wonder, I mean, I think that's it, right? You have too many characters that people want to see. You know, who's asking for a Mystique book? Well, Mystique fans. Well, we should make something for Mystique fans.
And because there's so many X-Men books, there's so many Uncanny books. If somebody sees a character, like I don't know, let's say they really like Storm when the movies come out, and they're like, all right, I want to go pick up an X-Men book. There is a chance they will pull out an X-Men book that does not have Storm in it. Because there's so many characters and there's so many iterations of X-Men, there's so many adjectives of X-Men that I can see why they want to have a Storm specific book to bring people to.
All 337 fans of Mystique, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty excited and emboldened by these Microlines and the way that they're selling. I think that's a really good sign. And quite frankly, I think that when you talk about lessons that can be learned, I I hear what you guys are saying. I vehemently disagree. I think Marvel should learn what is working from Absolute and Ultimate and apply it to X-Men.
100%.
And I agree with you, Sean.
I think that's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it doesn't sound like it. Marco was bringing out all business terms to explain why what they're doing makes sense.
Well, no, yeah. What he's saying is it makes sense business wise
Sure.
for a business person, but he's saying they're wrong.
Right.
It makes
I don't even think it makes sense business wise, and I think the numbers are showing that it doesn't make sense business wise. I think that they need, if we're talking about lessons learned, if we're talking about learning lessons and not just doing the same old shit, right? Learn the lesson from the success of this and apply it to your biggest cash cow. I guarantee you. What I'm saying is, I guarantee you that if there was no Storm book and Storm was just on the Uncanny X-Men, the sales of that Storm book would just be absorbed into the mainline X-Men book, and that would be that.
And I think you're right for comics, but we're talking about a publishing company at this point. And I know this is the comic book side of things, but we have to keep in mind that like these are characters, and there is a bigger cog in the machine where the comics monthly are such a small part of it that it doesn't matter as much as the characters and what they can do with those. And that's why I can see why they're doing it from a business standpoint and still disagree with it from what I want.
Well, that's different than what I've never been talking about what you just said. I'm talking about the comic sales. That's all I'm discussing. And I'm responding to what Marco was saying.
But then are you saying that there are people that only bought the Storm book and didn't buy the X-Men book?
Of course there are. And vice versa is true. How could
Right.
it not be true?
So then doesn't that just mean that you're playing with the same pool of people? And if that's the case, you're extracting 2 books worth of value versus 1 book of value.
Potentially extracting.
Sure.
Yeah, look,
That's what I'm saying.
Look, dude, Storm is not even in the top 50.
That's fine, but there were sales, is my point. There were sales. That means that people bought it, regardless of whether or not it's standing in a place of 10th, 5th, 100th. And at some point, they can decide to cancel it. That's no skin off their nose, and they will. Yeah, that's no skin off their nose.
What you're saying makes no sense to me. I have to be honest. I don't understand that.
The only thing that matters is that it's doing enough sales to justify it being printed and published. And if that at least covers that, then it's making them money.
That's it.
It's having a big cake. You're like, oh fuck yeah, big cake, and then a small tray of brownies, but you can only have a little bit of a piece of brownie. Damn, I get cake and a brownie, and Marvel is you in this scenario. They get a cake and a little piece of brownie, and they're trying to get the whole tray, but even if they get a little piece of brownie, dope.
Okay.
It's business and it sucks, but that's what they're doing.
I mean, I completely understand what they're doing. I just don't think that it works.
Yeah.
Hey, Promiscuous Time Traveler says, I personally think that we need more Batman books. The content's been pretty slim. True.
I would. Promiscuous Time Traveler also says, let's have a Marco's Minute on the topic. I think we just did.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's multiple minutes there. Yeah.
Tragically, I can't believe I argued with a Marco Business Minute.
I'm gonna end the poll. Which the question was, which new universe are you enjoying the most so far? We got a record amount of poll votes. So thank you guys for that. 117 of you voted. And not overwhelmingly, pretty close. It's Absolute. Absolute is your favorite of the universes. You guys, I think it was 42% of 41% Absolute, 38% Ultimate, and 20% Energon.
I mean, honestly, that's a pretty fair spread of opinions, right?
And I think Energon being that high is good, because like
Yeah.
that makes sense. Like I would imagine that a lot of you probably haven't even read the Energon books. So
Ooh,
Yes.
Silhouette calls out a good point. DC bias in the chat.
Well, but I would argue Absolute is the newest. And it's
Sure.
recency.
Recency.
At the moment, it's the most exciting. And Batman, like it or not, is always going to be more exciting than Optimus Prime.
they're one issue in. That's the funniest part to me. Like
Like,
Ultimate's
That's a big
is
issue.
like Ultimate's one or Ultimate Spider-Man is 10 issues deep. It's the best-selling comic every month except this one. And our audience is like, nah, fuck that.
I'd argue Absolute the single issues of the Absolute comics have done more than all of Ultimate Spider-Man right now.
I 1000%
Oh.
agree with that.
Yeah. Well,
In terms of content and progression, or I guess world building, I don't know.
in terms of world building, I think Ultimate Spider-Man is doing great. The problem that they have is that the Spider-Man character, Peter Parker, is about third down from people who do things and take action in that comic. Spider-Man has done less in his own book in 10 issues than Batman did in 1 issue.
And do you remember that Spider-Man's supposed to have kids in that book?
Yeah. Style So Serious says, I thought we learned polls don't mean anything anymore. Well, you're right, because Marvel trounces DC in sales. But
Yeah.
again, this month, not so much. Absolute did really well for DC. I mean, let's take another one last look. You have 1, 2. Okay. Well, you only have 3 books in the top 10 for DC, but I'm willing to bet that's a better number than usual.
In 3 books, and 2 of them are Absolute.
Yeah.
What's the mainline DC one? Batman?
It's DC All In.
Oh, well,
Batman,
it's essentially a DC all Absolute book.
Mainline Batman, the actual flagship, doesn't appear on this list until wow. I don't even
Still
know,
going.
dude.
Yikes. That's
Batman
bad.
153 is number 31 on the list.
Oh
Could
my
that
God.
be?
Yikes.
That's real bad.
Yeah,
That was
31.
top 10 perennial. That's ooh, sorry, Chip.
Nightwing at 118 and 119 are higher places.
Give him the Cal. Give him the Cal, guys.
Mystique
it.
beat it out.
I wish you would.
That's it.
Detective Comics
on.
1090 beat it out.
Blade Red Band beat it out.
Yo.
Hey, that validates Red Band then, huh?
Yeah, the editor who came up with that shtick is like, see, it's doing better than Batman. We got to keep going. 2025.
Moon Knight outsold Batman this month.
Schizo Batman beat Batman?
Like, how many
Say
times
that.
has that happened in history?
Fighter
Well,
Boy 12.
Probably more often than you think, given that Undead Hulk or whatever the fuck
Immortal.
that title was. Thank you. It did it.
I just mean like Moon Knight specifically. Like, how often has Moon Knight outsold Batman?
And I got to say, better quality comic. Consistently across the board. Probably Jed McKay's best thing he's doing.
Terminator #1 outsold. Sal Crivelli of Comic Pop outsold Batman. His first time making it on the top list. His debut, he outsells Batman. Let's go, Sal.
Talk about a
Shit.
comic pop.
Give him Batman.
I'd read it. Silhouette says, bro, I've been telling y'all the Batman title is stained. I mean, if it's not good, it ain't good. What are you gonna say?
Stained.
It's not. People don't enjoy it.
It's been a while since I've seen someone say that.
Like, people don't ever want to say that sales correlate to quality. People never want to acknowledge that. I do. I think that there is a correlation. And I think that the fact that Batman is selling this way says that people are not enjoying the book. That's not great.
What of the three universes, which do you think have the longest shelf life? Which can you see going the longest?
Energon.
Yeah.
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 Oh yeah.
Okay, I thought this would be a more debate-filled discussion.
Well, okay. Let's say between Ultimate and Absolute. If that's the case, I think it's Absolute. I think Scott's already said he's got 2 years planned, quote unquote, whatever the fuck that means. We got a couple. It's still 2 Scott-tobers in the future. So honestly, I have trouble. As much as I like Ultimates, I have trouble seeing where the line is in 2 years.
Well, and like we've said, they've put a deadline on it. So what comes after that?
I think
Nobody knows.
once we see that 1 year in special that comes out December, January, whatever, the Nick Fury Ultimates thing, I think that will at least help me understand or at least get a peek as to what is coming. But I think Absolute's got longer legs.
Marvel does one thing so much better than DC, it's not even funny. And that is beat a dead horse. So Ultimate Universe will continue on after Absolute, because if Absolute goes down the drain, DC will pull the plug. If Ultimate goes down the drain, Marvel will be like, wait a second, how many more of these can we sell? Let's sell them until literally no one is buying them.
DC has better pullout game, you're saying?
Yes.
Cool.
Oh, Batman is stained.
Did you just get my joke? I don't think anyone got it, to be honest.
I was adding to it.
TJ says, I think the problem is we're getting too much Batman comics instead of other IPs. Like, when was the last time we had a Dr. Fate comic? To be clear, I haven't been up to date. I mean, dude, I'm not sure that Dr. Fate is going to be selling like hotcakes as an individual series, but he is in JSA, and that was pretty good.
Yep.
And
go read it. Go
and
read
that, like, tragically, and I say this like it sucks. That's exactly what we're talking about with the X-Men line.
And TJ, can I just appreciate you for admitting you're out of date in a comment, adding some self reflection into a YouTube comment is rare, so I appreciate that.
And appreciated.
Figure Drawing says, you mocked that Bat comic being low. Who was the artist writer team on that? I mean, it's Chip Zdarsky and George Jimenez, and it's no shade on
among
them.
other people.
That's fair, among other people. We're not mocking them, the creators, but the book is not really great right now.
If anything, that's the creative team that would headline a big book any other week. Like, that's a creative team you can put an announcement on.
And they are headlining a big book, and it's not working. Whose fault is that? It's hard to say.
And is this Marco? Could you see this being the negative effect of doing that shotgun spread that the X-Men line's doing, where then even your flagship title starts suffering? Or do you think Absolute Batman kind of just supplanted it as it's still technically Batman IP, and it's just taking that top spot?
No, because then like right now, it's like Nightwing, Detective. I think it's just support quality.
Yeah. This is the market responding to how they feel about the book.
Yeah.
But again, people every fucking time I talk about Amazing Spider-Man, people always say, "Oh, well, people will buy it regardless," just like Batman. Batman is 35th in sales. Miss me with that argument. People won't buy if they don't like. It's a fact. for this to happen to Batman, if I'm in charge of DC, I mean, that's probably why Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee are coming back. That's the red button. They need Batman to sell. Make no mistake. The sales of Batman allow many other books to exist. That is how it works. Batman sells up here, fucking, I don't know, whatever book sells down here. This book would get canceled if not for the sales of Batman. That is how it works. So they have to get those sales back up.
And Sean, that usually exists towards editorial lines too, right? So that's like the Bat office where that needs to justify the other Bat books, or is that DC wide?
I don't think it's that like
that modular. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just like a DC thing. And it's a Marvel thing too. Amazing Spider-Man sales allow a lot of other books to exist.
And it's bad when the Jim Lee, the boss, has to come in and do the work. Imagine that happening in any other business.
Let me show these whippersnappers how it's done.
To be fair, Jim Lee has been chomping at the bit for this. I think that's more of him really wanting to do this.
And Dan Didio was writing books all the time, and they were not great.
To be fair, that Nightwing story that he just wrote in the Halloween special is pretty good. It's pretty good.
I don't believe you.
For some reason, I don't either.
I told you to read it, Cale. It's about Infinite Crisis
guess what?
and Superboy.
Guess what? I didn't.
I know you didn't.
Because I don't believe you.
That would be like self-flagellation, I think, for you, actually.
Yeah, it would. And I do that enough already.
Kefis has arrived, which means that we can address another angle of this conversation, which is the bet angle. Now, not my bet. My bet with Kefis involves Blade, the Mahershala Ali-driven film, which will release eventually, soon, maybe. Cale's bet with Kefis involves what we are discussing now. It involves the absolute books, and it specifically involves which will sell better, Absolute Superman or Absolute Wonder Woman. Now, Absolute Wonder Woman is number 2 on this list, behind Absolute Batman. However, we don't have numbers data. We don't know the dollar amount or the purchased amount. We have top 50 comic books by dollars, in which case Absolute Wonder Woman is still number 2. So in my mind, because we don't have literal numbers, to resolve the bet, and obviously it's you guys, it's whatever you say, to resolve the bet, Absolute Superman would have to come in higher or lower than second best for a definitive answer.
When it's on the chart and people have that makes sense.
Or could you compare the numbers? Or is it
we don't have them?
You don't have numbers. You just have the place in the chart. Okay.
Yeah.
That's got to be what it is. Yeah.
Just the
that makes sense. Yeah.
Which is a little unfair because it doesn't have an absolute Batman to keep it down. Number 2 might not sell as much as number 1.
And we would take a look at the units, not the sales.
Well, units and dollars has Absolute Wonder Woman as second sold overall.
Okay.
But we don't know we don't know if it was 600,000 or 300,000. Like, we don't know the number of sales.
No, but rather, are we measuring it by only unit or only sale in that position?
I said, and Cale agreed, it has to be Absolute Superman has to come in higher or lower than second in order to, know who won the bet.
So second in the unit chart then.
Yes.
Okay.
We only check out units here.
Emily, the goaltending drummer with the 10 spot, says, regarding Batman, IMO since Rebirth, Detective has been the better title. It's got more interesting stories, writers, artists, etc. Mainline Batman has been chasing Grant Morrison since they left the title. Wow, you are spitting facts, Emily.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of feels like Zdarsky's chasing just absolutely anybody who's still on the field.
Right.
I say that with love for the guy. Like, I love the way the dude writes, but
I think he needs some time back with Howard to reposition himself.
Hendrik Perry says the only person with a tighter grip on Blade than Marvel is Sean.
I'd argue Sean has I think Sean has a tighter grip on Blade than Marvel does.
And his
That's what he said.
Sean's grip is really he's starting to bleed from that grip on Blade.
Yeah,
Flipping a little.
Yeah, don't grip on the
No,
blade.
no. I'm
All the
good. Look at my
blood.
palms, baby. They solid. I ain't got no blood on me.
He's got some
I am
rippers.
very confident that Mahershala Ali will play Blade.
Did you see, and I saw this
Yes.
on Twitter, he is Blade in Marvel Zombies.
Yes. But that doesn't count.
That doesn't count.
That doesn't count. But
It has
I
to be
remain
a Blade
confident.
film.
Yes.
Yeah.
It has to be a Blade specific film starring Mahershala Ali. Absolutely. Figure Drawing asks us, what is more important, writing or art? I know it's an impossible question, but George is in that low-selling Bat book. Oof. Look, this is going to suck to hear, but the answer is 150 million % writing. 150 million %. It wasn't always, but it is now. I have no doubt in my mind.
I disagree.
You're going to have to make quite an argument to sell that one.
I don't think so, actually. I think you see the art first. And if somebody is in a comic shop, that's what they see first. They have to buy the book and read it to know whether they like it. They don't need to do that to buy it for the art.
That's not what Figure Drawing is asking. Figure Drawing is asking, what is more important to the sale of a comic, writing or art? And he's making that point by bringing up the fact that George Jimenez, who is, in his opinion, and I agree, one of the best artists in modern comics, can't sell Batman. So the idea is when a book is selling, what is more important to that book selling?
And I think that book would sell more if he was consistently on it.
Ooh, that's a great point.
He's not.
That's a great point.
I mean, we just did a video. I don't think it's dropped yet. We just did a video about why artists aren't as important to modern readers as writers. I stand by that. I don't think they are at all. Jim Lee, the era of even knowing artists' names and the artist being the top billing person is just over.
There's a wider swath of artists now, and a lot of them end in vowels and come from Italy. It's a little hard to keep track.
Jimenez was on 153 because that was the beginning of All In.
So he was on the issue we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's also
there
an
you go.
ongoing, and it's also 153.
But-
yeah.
Tyler,
But
do you think
It's
do you
it's the beginning of their everybody can jump in
It's that book.
initiative.
do you really think that George Jimenez being on the book inconsistently is more important to why it's not selling than the story?
As an ongoing, yes, actually. Yeah.
You're Tyler, please. You really believe that?
Yeah, I think it's
Come
too
on,
inconsistent
man.
to sell
Come
itself as an ongoing.
Nobody has even brought that up when we talk about Batman. They bring up that they don't like the story.
Well, I've actually.
I think we've brought that up a couple of times.
Yeah.
No,
we
I'm
have.
talking about chat. Look at the chat.
No, I'm
The
looking at all the
readership.
others.
Look
I
at them.
don't-
Everyone
I don't
says.
know what they talk about.
Well, that would explain
Cale's
a
not
lot.
on Twitter.
That is shocking. Dina Bari says good art is subjective, good storytelling is not. Dan says I'm with Sean. Saunders says the effects of Gotham War. Yeah, I don't know.
Hound
Peter
says
Palmer.
Hound says had to take a break and sleep. Catching up now. Great conversation as always. Now hold on a second.
Wait,
Hound.
hold on.
He's sick. Leave him alone.
This is like, when you wake up in the middle of sleep and you're on your phone and then you fall asleep next to your phone and it's already at like 50%.
No, I heard the whole thing.
Yeah.
Izzy
says,
Issue says-
Tyler, please, is a new level of
That's what I'm gonna say now and just leave it alone because I can't believe that you wake up in the morning to make that type of argument. That is just bugged out.
I didn't wake up with that intention.
Okay.
Then why are you here?
Well, we can talk about that later.
Mushaboom 90. I haven't seen that name before. Says art pulls me in, writing keeps me buying. They're both important, but if the art is bad or inconsistent, I find it difficult to buy. I find it difficult to buy if art isn't good too, for sure. 100%.
You can get one issue out of an artist, picking it up, one sale out of somebody picking it up and looking at it. But to keep them coming back, good art or not, the story that they're telling has to be consistent and good.
Yeah.
Cohesive.
I will never buy a book because I like the art if I don't like the story.
Oh, I've done the opposite.
I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
You do the
I've
opposite of
bought
that.
books that looked really good, and because it looks good, I might not really agree with the story. Like Ian Bertram books. Marco might understand here.
Oh, was that Little Birds?
Little Bird story
Yeah.
a little incoherent,
Yeah.
but it looked fucking good, and that's why I
Gorgeous.
picked it up.
Yeah. But at that point, I'm following artists.
Oh.
You know.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. It's still really early in the life of the absolute universe, and frankly, all these universes. We are under a year in for all of them, I think. So we still have a lot of data to collect, a lot of sales to see, and a lot of story to be told. But right now, I think is the most exciting time in comics in a decade. And I think the biggest reason why is these microlines. So my hope is that publishers can take a look at what is working about these and figure out from a marketing standpoint, from a line standpoint, from a creator standpoint, what they can take to make everything else that they are doing flourish. Because I do think it's possible. It would just require some change. But I'm hopeful. I even look at All In right now and how successful that seems to be. And it's like, well, hey, you took the best creators in the market and you put them on books.
Like it's your fucking job.
Right.
Yeah. And doing that, I think, is more interesting for the creators too, which only helps create better quality books.
I mean,
if
it
the
also
intention
keeps
is
them
there, yeah.
Yeah, it also keeps them engaged enough to want to be there for the long term. Like I think that's important in comics where you can swap out creators left and right, but if somebody's invested because they've put time into building something and creating things, they can become precious about that, and you can almost capitalize on that preciousness of, well, that's your world, dude. Go for it.
Yo, what is with the Frank Quietly hate in the chat right now?
Dude, I'm
Sonder,
wondering the
I-
same thing. Yeah.
Y'all need to get your eyes checked. I know Marley you just got that surgery. Maybe I'll fix that nasty opinion you just had. Morrison's new
Jesus.
X-Men shows story matters more because that art is rough. Boy.
Whoa.
Quietly art, I think you need to keep trying with it. Because I'll admit, right away, it's like, ooh, okay, this is a little dirty, it's a little gross. But I think you learn to like Quietly the more you have it.
Take that opinion and flush it down the toilet where it came from.
Put
Yeah,
your silly opinions in your
beautiful.
pocket. I will
Such
say,
good rendering.
there were a lot of people on my side in the comments as well.
Oh, God.
I will say.
Okay. So outside of Peace from Oko, what modern comic artist sells books on art alone?
Daniel Warren Johnson.
And really covers more so than interiors, but
Go
Oh,
ahead and
covers
open a
and art
pack
journal.
on Pokemon trading card game here. Well,
Yeah. Mewtwo, Charizard, or Pikachu, Cal.
probably Mewtwo.
Yeah, that's what I'm into.
DWJ.
I think of the big two, the characters really sell the books more, but that's a different discussion.
Come on. You're not even gonna answer the question.
guy is unreal, dude. Unreal. Wow. Chat, man, you don't know how hard it is. You don't know. All right. So we're gonna move forward because we still have some more show to do. Thank you guys for your incredible viewership so far. You guys are killing it. Maracus Giro says Liefeld. Absolutely. Rob Liefeld is 100% one of those artists.
Miller.
100%. Miller, of course. All artists whose careers did not start in the 2000s, which is the exact point that I made in the video that we did.
I don't know what points I made in that video. That's already been
I know you don't.
been forgotten at this point. But like Stegman on X-Men is selling it over Jet McKay, in my opinion. Although
Stegman's not even on that book. Stegman did.
I also think there's another issue with that. Yeah.
Stegman did. He's done less than half of the issues that have come out so far.
And that's why it's probably not selling that great, because there's no consistent artist.
No, it has nothing to do with the fact that the script is absolute fucking garbage.
Get Shitty says Tyler's being a massive contrarian today. That's Cale's job, Tyler.
That's literally
I'm just saying
Tyler's
we were
existence on this
agreeing
podcast.
too much on the show. I will say that. We've stated that this episode.
It started at the top. Yeah.
You need
yeah,
a
I
little
said this
spice occasionally. And
Y'all think-
honestly, sometimes I make opinions on here that I don't even know if I actually believe. But if I lie to myself
See?
enough, you believe it.
That
See,
is so. Why would you
the
even
issue
say
the
that on
issue is
air?
I'm not a contrarian. I believe my bad takes.
I'm Puerto Rican, so I don't know where Contraria is.
Oof. What was I? gonna get
Sean,
to?
you unplugged yourself, or I unplugged myself. Never mind.
What?
I don't think you could hear.
It was him.
Yeah.
It was him.
Oh my god, dude!
There we go.
This is one of those days.
Have some
Ocean
fun
Stain
with it.
says, "Keep up the good work, guys. Only getting into comics, this community has been a great guide.
All
Thank
right.
you, thank you. Appreciate that. I'm glad we could be. One of the things that I find so interesting is how many of you are new readers. That shit's crazy.
Should we like this is a broad question. We certainly don't have to workshop it here. I would love input from the chat as well. Should we do something for new readers?
Like a buyer's guide.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, I would also say check out that Google Doc where we're asking for feedback.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We just sent that out.
That is
Good.
a
Fair enough.
great point and something that we should reshare now.
It's pinned. It's pinned.
Yeah, it's still up.
Okay, so click that, please. I saw Izzy did it. I saw someone else, Steve Matthews, I think, did it. Please,
in.
please do fill out that Google Doc. It helps us out a lot. Leetrick says backflip.
I can't do a backflip for new readers, Leetrix.
Why not?
It's Electrics, guys. He said that was pronounced.
Where to buy for new readers? Comic shop. Easy.
Comic shop locator.
Saunders says reading guide for your Patreon on some of your favorite characters, not subbed yet, but would be pretty good. Okay, that's an
Oh.
interesting idea.
You know what? I wonder if I still have it at the other place. I did one of those, a very condensed version of one for Flash and I think Batman. I think somehow I got wrangled into the Batman one.
Hey, you got to add Chip Zdarsky's Batman to it now and update it.
Yeah, that's right.
No, I don't.
Steve Matthews says, is there already too much Comics Pals lore and continuity for new listeners? Reboot. What would we be? The
One of us would get
absolute
gender
Comics
swapped, I
Pals?
think. One of us would get gender swapped.
I think we need.
I'd be a
Interesting.
human.
That's okay.
You say diversity, I will help you know you are the minority in the situation.
All right.
Yeah, I think we need a crisis, not a reboot. We need a crisis in the
Wasn't
the
that two-
infinite
wasn't that 2 years
Pals
ago?
universe.
Didn't we just have one 2 years
Reboot
ago?
Yeah. We did. Beach episode. Let's go.
Does YouTube allow bikini streams? I don't know.
Better. It will. Damn it.
All right. I want to do something for the audience since you guys have been so amazing and you guys there's still over 100 of you with us. That's fantastic. I want to give away some memberships. We've got a few to give away. I'm going to give away 10 right now, or 5 right now.
Get outta
Let's
here.
let's get some new members into the fold. Get you guys watching some of the videos we have behind the YouTube paywall. Promiscuous Time Traveler, Samuel Summers, DJ, Zach Pearson, Canadian Survivalist. Congratulations to you all on your gifted memberships. It's crazy how I think 3 or 4 out of those 5 have already gotten gifted memberships from us before.
Canadian Survivalist. How are you getting YouTube out there? That's impressive.
In the wilds.
Yeah, Starlink. I don't know.
Izzy's issue says, are these opinions today not the crisis? Well, they might be.
Monster
That's
design.
That's a doomsday level opinion. That's not a crisis.
Monsters Design says absolute comics pals. Marco has never heard of Swamp Thing. He's read every other book, but
That's just a new character at that point. Jeez.
Yeah, for real.
Who am I?
That's like rebooting Batman and one of his parents is still alive. Too different.
So thank you guys for the support. I want to specifically talk to and call out our patrons. Patreon.com/thecomicspals is the absolute best way to support your boys and get some kickback for your support. We are always trying to give you as much as we can. We've got a newsletter up there on our Patreon page, an exclusive show called Palling Around, which we got to get one of those out there. And most importantly, you get a nickname and a shout out on the show. So I do want to say thank you. I want to give a special shout out to our Palsverse legends: Thunderstruck Rebecca Alejandro, the Hound of Justice Atomic Hound, Starcross Catherine Stars, the Red Spiral Spiral Storm, Orpheus the Waterbound, Adam and Bernie the bestest boy. Marco, is it your time to shine, by the way?
Yes, sir.
All right. And thank you to Palsverse members, the Night Stalker Harris Dajinski, Brian Demolisher Del Pozo, Kefis the Incorruptible, Momentum Mike Elliott, Dan the True Trudeau, Jalen the Sanguine Sorcerer, Marley Manastorm, Slow Flow Dameron, Christian Uncaged Harriet, Always Laughing, the Spear of Justice, Izzy Spears, the Great Destroyer Hyper Viper 89, Robert Runback Cashaback, Pete the Dreamweaver Collins, Matthew Malice Price, James Just Jamming Jones, Amin Almighty Perez, Paul Powerhouse Smith, Andrew the Galaxian Smith, Neon Knight, Cosmic Avenger, Matthew the Shade Cosmo, BJ Kicks, the Living Blade Boss Rendier, the Grand Alchemist, Chop Harder Alchemist, John Barrier B, Simon Galeforce, Garrett Garnett, Todd Tremor Butler, Cameron Cavernous Gordon, Doomsday David Melendez Doria, Cameron Torn Thornton, Steve Canaris. Your Palsverse origin is next up. Brian Rage Redmond, and joining the Palsverse while getting their origin today, Panda v Panda, Ted Wong. Marco, take it away.
You're not my real brother! A pair of hands push Sanji from the shoulders. His eyes widen as he falls back onto the tiled floor and lands on his bushy tail. Ted stands above him, face still red and flustered, arms outstretched. It takes him a moment to process what he's done. Then comes Sanji's tears. At the sound of one of her babies crying, Mama Bear comes out of her concrete cave. What's all this fuss? As soon as she steps out, both Sanji and Ted look at her. With puffy eyes, Sanji gets up, takes an angry glance at Ted, and rushes past her back into the concrete cave. Ted stands there, about to make an excuse, but instead folds his arms and pouts. Nothing. A little honesty never hurt anyone. Sanji wanted to know when Dad would be back, and we both know he's dead. It's not even his dad in the first place. She could sense his sadness, but she had to address his misplaced anger. Come here, baby. The best she could do was lead with patience and love. As he fell into her fuzzy hold, Ted began to cry. I miss Dad too, and I feel your pain, but it's the 3 of us now, and we're a family. We have to watch out for each other. We're all that's left after the fires. He looks up at the sky, the sun setting over another day at the zoo, Crickets are chirping, lights are turning on. Ted remembers back to the smoke and haze. He was half conscious. Dad was heading back to the nest to free Mom from a collapse of trees. Vignettes of tar, smell, and boiled colors. When he woke up again, his mother had sustained burns, but they were alive. This was the last time that he had seen Dad. As they wandered towards a nearby river to rehydrate, to wash off the soot, Ted heard the cry of something small and feral behind some bushes. Another baby panda, alone and covered in soot, seemingly lost their parents too. That day, he'd lost his dad to a fire, but from the ashes was born a brother and a life partner, Sanji. He was foolish to forget the miracle that a sibling was. Blood or not, it was circumstance that made bonds that could never be broken. He remembered that, and Mama cooed and soothed his head. "I'm sorry, Mama," said Ted. "I need to find Sanji and apologize." "I'm proud of you, baby. Forgiveness is the greatest tool you have in life. Go see him and go give him a hug." As Ted walked back towards the cave, he heard stifled cries. He assumed more tears. He could feel how much he had hurt his brother. Only this time more concerned. He pushed through the door, and as he rushed into the enclosure, he found Sanji near the access door, muzzled and being placed into a bag by zookeepers. A muffled yell. "Ted, help!" Ted rushed to the door, but just as he got close, the door slammed. It felt like a jail cell, and on the other side, his brother disappeared into the darkness. "No, no, no," pleaded Ted. A feeling began to build inside him. He grew flush, but it wasn't with rage. It was with the very rancor of the fire that started that day in the forest, one hungry for fairness in a cruel world. He yelled out, "This can't be happening! Not my little brother!" The room grew hot, and the door began to sweat of its own rotten metal. But before he could do anything, before the effects could be felt, Ted fell unconscious. The next day, dizzied, he woke up in his mother's lap. "Mama? Ted, oh my goodness, are you okay?" It took him a second, but his eyes sharpened, and he remembered what happened. "Sanji! Sanji!" he cried out. Where's Sanji?" "They took him, Teddy. He's off to another zoo. There's nothing we can do." Ted looked down at his fluffy paws. He could feel his vein pulsing. He couldn't even apologize. And now, Sanji hated him. But he felt that power in his veins, pulsing. There was something he could do. He would hone that. "Stay safe, Sanji. I'm coming for you." And a salute to you, Ted, on your mission to save your brother from the other zoo.
Huh.
It's a panda.
Different,
It's a
different
talking panda.
feel. A different feel from the normal ones.
This
Very-
I like the atomic count idea of like potentially having animal like characters, and then we have the best boy. So I wanted to see if there's like
okay.
anthropomorphized.
It feels like this has potential to be John Wick meets Madagascar.
Less dancing.
There's no, they don't like to move it in this one.
I have
All
fun
right.
with this one.
Ted, welcome to the Palsverse, dude. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoy your origin. And if you guys listening want to get an origin yourself, the only way to do that right now is patreon.com/thecomicspals under the Join the Palsverse tier. And we will get that origin out to you as soon as we can. Obviously, like, it takes time to write these and come up with the ideas. And then, we don't want to devote too much time every week to delivering the origins, but yeah, they are all coming. Ted says, "Love the story. Thanks, pals." There you go, Marco. He's here with us now.
Hey, awesome.
Which those keys
Thanks
on a
so much.
keyboard got to be huge for a pan to be able to hit them. So I appreciate that.
I like the panda v panda thing.
Can I also just say that 20 people have already filled out the feedback form? That is nuts.
Wow.
Thank you The most responses we got ever to this when we did it last time was 26.
I was
So the
going to say,
fact that
was that many?
we're already at 20 is huge. I know that, most people won't do it because that's how things like this work. So as many of you can, please do. It really helps. And maybe we can do a prize. Maybe we can do something. I've been trying to figure out how to add an incentive. But yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that.
It's like
Uh
the incentive to do
where's
a customer survey after a phone call. It's like, oh, you can win a $50 gift card. Just stuff like that. I still don't do them. But.
Ryan 12ish, the feedback form link is pinned in the YouTube chat. And we have also now posted it in the YouTube chat. So you can find it in those places.
Yeah, please click on that and fill it out. Oh yeah, how could I almost forget? The book club. The Grant Morrison month book club poll is underway now. You guys nominated a whole bunch of you. We had what was the number? 21 different books, I think it was, nominated from Grant. So that's pretty impressive, I think. And we narrowed it down to a final 4 that I wouldn't say surprises me too much, although there is one book that made it here that I'm a little bit surprised by. So we have we have Batman, core Batman, um, Final Crisis, All-Star Superman, and Justice League. Those are the 4 books. Right now, JLA sits at 15%. Final Crisis sits at 19.
Ooh.
All-Star Superman 27, and Batman is at 38%.
Oh,
Come on, guys. Give me that Final Crisis vote.
Why?
Why not? I'm tired of reading your pedestrian books. I want to think.
Well, if that's the case, where's Invisibles at?
Hey, listen, I wanted it.
Apparently at SNL, somebody said the cast at the end of SNL last week looked like the Invisibles with Chapel Roan. It's a good little meme I can share.
That's funny. I get that reference.
good.
Yeah, I'm surprised too, Dan, that that new X-Men isn't on there. That's a big surprise. If you want to vote though, if you want to cast your vote, you've got to be a patron. Any supporting member of our Patreon can vote. So join us over there and you can get your vote in. We are closing things down on Tuesday. Tuesday is when we're going to know what the book will be. So make sure that you get out there and vote. Grandma got run over by a reindeer says the incentive is
What?
the flag. I know, crazy name. The flag gets 10 times bigger and more gimmicky. Dude, you don't even know the half of it. If I showed you what I really have going on with these flags, you'd be amazed.
It's
But
all
I'm not.
it's already behind him. How could it get bigger and more gimmicky?
What? I've got these too. I got these. I got the red ones. It's not all about the green.
Hey, whoa, maybe it is. It's the DC universe we're talking about. It's a DC podcast.
It's a Marvel podcast. Get it right.
Oh, dang.
So yeah, cast your vote. We want to see more of those before we close things down, but we will be doing that on Tuesday. Speaking of Grant Morrison, let's talk about our number 3 picks for our top 5 Grant Morrison books. We are up to number 3. I want to see you guys in chat sharing your picks as well, please. Tyler, why don't you kick us off with your number 3?
Number 3. My number 3, and much to the chagrin of the poll, I guess, to some people, is New X-Men. New X-Men reinvented the X-Men for the modern era. I would put that in like astonishing, maybe right near it. But it really kind of took the X-Men into this century. It did some stuff with them that I don't think I think people underappreciate New X-Men too. I think it looked so different, and I think it, even in the chat here, the Quietly art maybe didn't really appeal to everyone, and it was a drastic difference compared to the X-Men art of the '90s, the Jim Lees, even like I'm thinking like Generation X with Bachalo at the time, which is much more less what Bachalo is like now, but Quietly did something really different, and I also think that Morrison did as well, and it has some of my favorite beats in X-Men history. Like I know people bash on Beak as a character, but what Beak was in New X-Men was riveting to me. And it made like an ugly character. It dealt with the idea of outward mutations versus mutations that are invisible, which I think still is not touched upon enough, to be honest. And I think it's one of my favorite X-Men stories of all time. So yeah, number 3, New X-Men, Grant Morrison.
Awesome.
I'd always wish they did that kind of stuff, but then included like the Morlocks because that was very much that premise.
Well, even Beast new transformation as well. Like that was a big deal.
Yeah.
He was.
It's wild how turning blue will actually make you more fuckable.
If only states could do that. Never mind. Wrong podcast.
Marco?
My number 3 is actually 7 Soldiers of Victory. So this was off the back, I think, of a recommendation from Cale years ago.
I used it in my master's thesis. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And I loved it. It was so good. Some of the other Grant stuff that I read that was at that point on, or like would have been an ongoing series at the time, or like a condensed, a contained series rather. And so I love the character interactions. I loved the wackiness and the level that Grant operates on. This is where I first started to feel like I'm reading at a surface level. I'm seeing the pages and I'm absorbing the subtext, and then I can feel him working above that, or I can feel them working above that subtext. And that's the first time that I've felt that in one of Grant's books, and really started to appreciate the craft of that work. And so yeah, I thought it was a transformative series for me as a newcomer to more DC out there comics, and as a Grant reader.
Can I just say that I don't know if anyone brought this up already, but in this image that Tyler has up on the screen, doesn't Grant look like Patrick Stewart?
A little
I
bit.
think that's a little being a
yeah.
little baldest. I gotta say,
It's that
not all
it's
bald
that
white.
quietly sort of extra wrinkle look, I think.
Yeah, I was listening to Marco talk and I'm staring at that picture and I'm like, that's fucking Patrick Stewart.
Oh, Marco's talking about reading into comics at a new level, and Sean's just like engage Earl Grey.
Yeah.
Well,
like,
it's like when some people may have heard this, but when Patrick Stewart was offered the role of Charles Xavier, they handed him a comic and he said, "Why am I in this comic book?" The thing is, Grant also did that, but he was in the comic book. They were in the comic book.
True.
Charlotte Little Miss Marvel says, "Baldest."
I mean, listen, what do you want me to tell you? It's a white guy with a bald head wearing a suit. I associate that with 2 people, Patrick Stewart and Grant Morrison. I'm sorry.
So
Only.
rude. Style So Serious says, "Sean, that's racist. All white people don't look alike."
I'm sorry.
Red flag for baldism.
Steve, are you bald? Steve Matthews? Did I offend your baldness? I am sorry.
That's like asking a woman her age. Don't ask that.
You don't have to be bald to stand up for what's right, Sean.
You're right.
Sometimes the most bald people are the shining examples of what to be, and that's probably because the sun hit them the right way.
The true bald people are the ones that are bald on the inside.
Dan says Sean doubling down on his bigotry. Listen, bro, what do you want me to tell you? They look alike. They look alike. Go ahead, Cale.
For my number 3 or for the
Yeah.
comment I'm reading?
Well,
Oh, okay.
whatever you want to do, whatever.
All right. Emily, the goaltending drummer. I gotta call this out. Grant Morrison and Alan Moore were lovers in another lifetime. You know what?
Yep.
Another
There's-
lifetime.
Well, all right. So my number 3 is Batman. Is the core run on Batman that Grant did, from Batman and Son to, I mean, even it, I would say just up to the end of the New 52, up to, I'm sorry, the beginning of the New 52, the end of the pre-52 era. I felt I really loved the way Grant worked to condense, but also make canon absolutely crazy stuff that happened, in the 60s and gave like a sort of in-universe possibility for those events in Batman's life, even if it was just we locked him in a chamber and fed him a bunch of drugs and he dreamt about, having different colored suits or whatever the fuck. And the use of Zuranar and taking Batman to another level and actually giving Batman another personality that is more Batman. I thought was just really good. But even earlier than that, the the one of the issues of Batman that I go back to the most is actually the all text issue of, I think it's Batman and Son. I've always loved Grant's Joker. I used Grant's Joker in my master's thesis. My master's thesis is basically about Grant Morrison. But the way Grant describes like the shifting of the Joker's personality and the way the Joker sort of reincarnates, I think is just like, it's true art. And that issue is so special. Like, all due respect to artists, but like what Grant was doing there could not be captured
Hmm.
in the mind of another person, let alone in the mind with a pencil, right? I think that issue needed to be all text, and Grant saw that and ran with it. That I love that entire run. And if it weren't for my other two, which I feel stronger about, I think it would be higher.
I'm gonna give my last one after we, or my number 3 rather, after we shout out this super chat from Dwight Baldwin, who said, "What do you all think?" 4.99. Thank you, Dwight. Who said, "What do you all think of Mark Waid's comments about writing superheroes in the wake of the election?" That's a good question. I'm gonna be honest with you. I thought about having a topic here dedicated to that question.
Mhm.
I've really wanted to talk about a lot of that stuff, and it's just tough because, this is not a political podcast. So I guess we'll keep that to the side, the real political heaviness to the side. Um, I think that Mark Waid was probably speaking very emotionally in a moment of vulnerability and maybe shouldn't have been tweeting, or blue skying or whatever it was. Mark Waid made a statement basically saying that as a result of the election, that, the quality of his work would dip and he can't write superheroes, in this climate. And if you notice his work dipping, don't be surprised. And a lot of people extrapolated and took that to mean that he was quitting writing superheroes. I think he was just having a vulnerable moment. I think don't read too much into it. I'm sure he's not going anywhere. Financially, he can't go anywhere. And he wouldn't do that to his collaborators or the company that is putting themselves behind him. I wouldn't take him at his word on that.
And
Yeah,
I don't think he would do that to characters.
or at most the maybe the subject matter can become pointed. I think as a good writer, I'm sure you can lead into that. You know, you can lean into an opinion and an ideology, a counter ideology, whatever that might be. So if anything, I think similarly, yeah, was was feeling down, but uh, as any artist might, at some point something's going to influence the work, and for a writer of Wade's talents, I think it'll probably be a positive.
I think it's safe to say everyone was feeling emotionally charged this past week, one way or another. And I think Waid is a guy that does wear his politics and his personal beliefs on his sleeve, to the chagrin of a lot of comic book readers who maybe disagree with him. I appreciate it personally. Dan says here, Waid just gave a lot of jackasses a club to hit him with, unfortunately. Yeah, there's a reason he's on Blue Sky now, not Twitter. When now he's not on anything. And I think it's one of those cases where, like, you tweet out of frustration. You know, you need to speak out into the ether at some points. And for a writer, I can see why that's how he copes. And I hope this isn't the case. I think if there's any writer out there that can channel that frustration and that anger and that disappointment into readable work, it's Mark Waid. And I know his stuff typically tends to be a lot more lighthearted, and a lot more, it is a lot more Superman charged. So maybe we can see the dark side charged bits of his work coming up. But I think Mark Waid can do it, and I hope he does, because he's one of my favorite writers. So
I
Wade.
think. Oh, please.
Mark Wade's going to be affected by Darkseid. That's what I heard there.
I think absolute Mark Waid. I think Mark Waid writes superheroes coming through their long dark night of the soul. That's his job. And with this anger and with this vigor that he's feeling, I think that we might get to watch him go through that writing these characters. And to me, that's sort of how I took the basis of his comment. It's just like, there's going to be some stuff to work through, but through writing superheroes who go through some of the hardest, most challenging issues, both personally and professionally, Mark's gonna have to go through that as well. And it's pithy and quotable to say it, and it isn't entirely very comforting, but unfortunately, good art comes out of hard times. And I think, that's what we're going to see from Mark. There's no way he's going to stop writing.
I mean, he wrote Daredevil out of Shadowland. Come on.
It's what Kingdom Come is all about.
Grandma asks, legit question, did we see a shift in the comic storylines in 2016 that dealt more with it? I think it's not like after 2016, but it's definitely in the same climate. Was Secret Empire. Secret Empire was a story that very much was tugging on real world situations. Even if you go a little bit further back and you look at the relationship between Captain America and Sam Wilson, or Steve Rogers and Sam Wilson, and the argument about who is Cap, who better represents America. I'm not going to say it, but look at what was happening at that time in America. I think you can see that what Nick Spencer and co were cooking with was ingredients that came from, American politics and socio-political situations circa 2016.
I mean, most recently, Avengers Twilight. Chip Zdarsky mentioned, that was literally him writing, during the peak of COVID, during, he said it, his response to Trump's first term. and COVID. And this is what came out of that. It just was essentially in a drawer somewhere for a while. So when Avengers Twilight came out, he was like, oh, that's a surprise to me. But yeah, the books do reflect that, whether as on the nose like Savage Dragon does, or as maybe a little more obtuse like Avengers Twilight does.
And I think it's also the kind of comic that you consume. Alesh Kott wrote a book in 2015, leading up to a lot of like high political climate, called Material under Image,
It's a good book.
all
Yeah.
about coming off of the back of war, race relations, Islamophobia. Like there was so much going on at the time anyway, that I think depending on the kind of material and writer and artist that you follow, you're bound to find things. Political cartoonists exist and have always existed, and from there you can spill out into mainline, maybe with lesser degree, but Image for sure.
Dwight Baldwin followed up and said, I can understand anyone's frustration over an election. As someone whose comments can impact sales, I think it's best for creators to express those kinds of feelings privately. Well, we talked about Greg Capullo recently and his comments about FCO Placencia. And I think, upon reflection, looking back, listening back on that episode, the one thing I can definitely say that I came away feeling differently about was that he shouldn't have spoken his private feelings publicly about FCO. And I guess I would say I probably feel the same way in this case about what Mark said. Not that he shouldn't be allowed to express his feeling bad about what occurred. For me, it's more so him saying that his work is going to suffer and, he can't write superhero comics. I think, maybe that sends the wrong message to the buying public who can't see through his in the moment feelings and will think, well, I shouldn't buy Mark Waid comics if he's saying that there's going to be a quality dip. I don't want to read that. I think maybe that part of it could have been left out of the equation.
And I think that's always been the tightrope that creators have had to walk.
Yeah.
With social media and being their own marketing team. For me, I think there is a big difference between what Greg said about FCO versus what Mark is saying here, because, essentially Greg was attacking FCO. And, he was doing that through frustration. While both are, expressions of frustration, and both are very valid sentiments to be put on social media, they both walk that tight line of the debate of how much can you put on social media for the public consumption.
Yeah. It's really a difficult position to be in, especially in comics where this conversation, that some of the people, and not some, a lot, probably don't feel how you do in the case of Mark, and that a lot of those same people probably love your work. So it's tough. Even here, like there are things I would love to say that I'm not going to say because we're on the public air, and there are a lot of you who, I just don't want to ruffle political feathers. But, yeah, I think it's much ado about nothing. Ultimately, Mark will be fine. Comics will be fine, and if anything, we'll probably get better books out of this whole deal. So, bully for us. Let me just get my last my number 3 out.
Yeah, brighten things
Tyler,
up, Sean. Brighten things up.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about a book that might actually surprise you guys. It's Batman. That's not a surprise. The Return of Bruce Wayne.
In your top 5.
In my top 5, yes. So this
Uh-huh.
was the 6 issue, like, in between of when Bruce got sent back into the Stone Age from the Omega Beam, which is one of my favorite moments in comics history, because it's funny to me that Darkseid could have done anything he wanted with that beam, but he decided to zip Bruce back into the fucking pre-Stone Age just to be a dick. And Batman said, "You know what? I see you, and I raise you the fact that I'm the motherfucking Batman, and I can come back from the Stone Age to the modern era, not age a day, and still be the man." That story arc impacted me on a lot of levels. It showed me Bruce's true grit. That there's nothing you can put in front of him that he can't overcome. Nothing. And I know that there are a lot of fans of Batman for whom that is a problem, that bothers them. I'm not one of those people. And that's probably because I started reading with Grant. So to me, the Bat God Batman is Batman, and he can do anything. And watching the journey of a regular man across 6 issues go from the past to the present and every step in between with a murderer's row of incredible artists behind Grant, I'll never forget that feeling, man. The mystery, wanting to know what was going to happen next. I mean, the artists, Chris Sprouse, Fraser Irving, who I love. Where's he been at? Yannick Paquette, Georges Jenny, Ryan Sook, Lee Garbett. Like, it was just
Wow.
it was just such an incredible series. Each issue was very different. It's Batman versus Barbados. There's some Cthulhu shit in there.
What?
It's crazy, mind-blowing stuff. I implore you to read it if you haven't.
I agree with you in principle with the elevator pitch. Batman, Bruce Wayne as Batman will absolutely crawl on his fingernails through time to re-punch Darkseid in the face. I think there were execution problems that I had with that book that made me really not enjoy it. I feel like it revolved around, like, wasn't there a cyborg Batman of some form or another? I haven't read it in a while because I detest that book.
There was a bomb or something that was going to be going off or some crazy shit if Bruce
Yeah.
couldn't succeed at his mission. But that what you're discussing was playing in the margins
Yeah.
of the larger story. Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah.
he got thrown back in time and had to defuse a bomb in the present and made it through that timeline to defuse said bomb?
It's some shit like that.
Something like that.
That's
Yeah.
fucking
Which
wacky.
I think some shit like that is a good way to describe a Grant Morrison comic.
Well, for me, that was the first time that I went, oh, well, maybe not the first time, but I went, oh, Grant is fallible. Like, this didn't hit.
Sean, was there a particular artist on that? Because I wrote different artists each issue. Was there one that jumped out to you?
I feel like I think it was Fraser Irving. There were a couple issues that I'm thinking about, right. I haven't read this in many, many years, but it's the one where he's in like gosh, what time period with this? I'm so bad with, like, um Witch Hunt era.
Like
Victorian?
a Puritan era sort of
Thank
thing.
you.
Yeah.
That issue was insane.
Yep.
I think that might have been Fraser's issue. I don't recall. And then
I'll find out.
go ahead.
I'm gonna find out right now. Keep talking though.
And then also the one where it's like maybe issue 1 or 2, where he's a fucking caveman. He has no memories at all. All he sees is I think it's just the bat symbol, and he draws that shit on a fucking cave wall. And that is what motivates him throughout history. He has to keep reminding himself of who in the hell he is by continuing to tell the legend of the Batman to himself, essentially, across all time.
Yeah.
It was issue 2.
Issue
Yeah,
2,
it was
yeah.
that one you're saying is Fraser Irving.
Fire.
That's a Marco artist, I think.
Yeah?
Are you familiar with Fraser Irving?
No, but I'm looking at this cover and it looks real cool.
Look up interiors.
Well, that's
It's
a
nuts.
Kubert cover.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. So that's my number 3. I know that is not on a lot of people's list, but I got something really special out of that book. I want to read it again. So um,
I would be open to that.
depending on what reads or what wins rather the book club, if Batman wins the book club, I'll probably read those 6 issues as well.
Whoa, you got some nice watercolors.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, is that the art style?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that for
Oh,
Fraser Irving. Yeah.
yeah.
very Vertigo like, not
Yeah.
traditional DC comics. Although, did he do some Starman as well? Am I right in thinking that?
Did Seven Soldiers, the Clarion something?
Yes, Clary and the
Yes.
Witch Boy.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Dan Trudeau says, I'm fine with the Bat God Batman when it's Morrison writing it. They nail it while others make it a crutch. Same with the God level Superman and All Star. Yeah, I think I agree with that. And I also think that's why I like Snyder's run so much because he didn't really lean into the Bat God stuff. I think a lot of other writers do it in an inferior way.
It's easy to lean on it and then not do anything with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think
go ahead.
you have to be able to challenge a god. And that's something that Grant is very good at, like that higher level of thinking that a lot of writers will try, but it doesn't quite work.
Yeah, I completely agree. Saunders says, I love Batgod because of JLA era and Batman Superman era, but my journey of Batman started in the 80s, and that's my personal favorite take and the Dini stuff. That's valid too. It's probably maybe the thing I love most about Batman is that you can get pretty much any kind of Batman. Like there is no invalid version. Like even like if you were to ask people from the 60s or 70s, well, what do you like about Batman? Or what's your favorite Batman? They would talk about the TV show, the 66 Camp with Adam West, right? Like, that's totally different than 89. They're both Batman. They're both good.
And there's a reason why Black Label is dubbed Bat Label. It's because Batman's a malleable character. There's a lot of different variations you can get.
Although I wish
Well,
they would I agree with you and I in the idea, but they just give us the same flavor of Batman
Yeah,
in those
I
Black
agree.
Label
I agree.
books.
Yeah.
and we've had the same flavor for a long time.
In the comics, you mean?
Yeah.
Would you like how would you solve that problem?
It's interesting. I have a pet theory that I don't know how to solve. I often wonder. So, in that Grant issue of Batman, the all text one that he talks that I spoke about earlier, Grant makes text that there are different versions of the Joker, that he's gone through various reincarnations. I have long since wondered how each Joker and each Batman are connected, and what would happen if the Joker reverted, and if it would affect the current Batman, and how would that sort of how would that play out? Would we have to see Batman revert as well? So say, current Joker goes back to Cesar Romero and becomes campy and silly and, just paints over his mustache, right? How does our Batman deal with that? And does that make him more deadly? Does that make him less deadly? How does it work?
Isn't that 3 Jokers?
Yes, but mine's better.
I don't even know if that I don't think that's 3 Jokers. I feel like the idea of how Batman responds to a different version of the Joker is one that we really haven't seen, at least not to my recollection. I don't feel like we've seen that.
I think 3 Jokers is the realistic explanation of Grant's Joker thesis. there are multiple Jokers, so obviously they're different. That's not satisfying to me, and it never has been. Sorry, Jeff. Sorry. But you know, when you have a character who, like the Joker, who can see the puppet strings, you know, as Grant has posited, how does Batman react?
Well, to that point of sees the puppet strings and taking it like to that meta level, Joker reincarnates every time across any new iteration of writer as well, any iteration of creator. So for me, I feel like the there isn't a solve, there's only adaptability, and that is Batman's strength is adaptability under pressure, um, and finding ways to make things work. If there was a regression, in my mind, he already has that card. He knows what to do. He applies it. Done. He can't regress because he has to evolve if he wants to best the best.
But I think what's interesting about what Cale's suggesting is that, okay, I am prepared to face the Joker. But the Joker's always wheels within wheels of plans and strategies. So if he reverts, if he's showing me a side of himself that I haven't seen in 10 years, is this an act? Is it a game? What more is at play? How did I beat him back then?
Yeah. How far ahead is Batman in 2024 if Joker reverts back to 1966?
And presumably maybe he found, he's like, oh, I was defeated in this way, I found a weakness, let me revert back, let me play back into the role. Or to that point, then Sean, he reverts back, but the play is in that reversion. How do you usually move forward in a lateral direction?
Or if the Joker is always moving wheels within wheels, can he transition between them and make a play, small wheel Joker to big wheel Joker, or big wheel Joker to small wheel Joker?
Ooh.
And they're in between.
Chip
Stop
Zdarsky.
talking. Shut up. Stop talking. I'm going to write Batman next. Keep your mouth shut. TM. This is mine.
Email it to yourself. You're good.
Right?
So it's what Chip did with his little Joker and our shit.
Ah,
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like, you know,
sorry.
you know, that's what I was saying earlier with Chip, you know, sort of chasing other strands, you know, it doesn't feel as good if he's not saying something.
I agree.
And I think that's sort of the difference when you have, I don't want to offend. I'm saying this with the utmost respect. It's the difference between creators who churn stuff out for continuity, say like Williamson, versus writers like Al Ewing, who are, you know, working within their own thing and making a statement. You know, and I think the perfect sort of in between example is Gillen, because we have really great statement making runs on stuff like Young Avengers or Eternals. But then when you get to X-Men, it just kind of, it doesn't quite work.
Man. Yeah, I feel like we could talk about that on its own. Because I agree with that too. Yeah. Get on the horn, man. Talk to Jim Lee. Let's see if we can get a Jim Lee interview. He's gonna be writing Batman. Hey, I believe we could get Jeff Loeb on the podcast. And if we can get Jeff Loeb on the podcast, can we get Jim Lee to join him? And then can Cale pitch to Jim Lee? Well, that last part probably won't
don't scare him
happen,
away. I think we could do it if we say Jim could draw while he talks to us. He doesn't need to pay full attention to us. We can let him do his thing.
He doesn't have to listen to a fucking word I say. As long as he's drawing and he's here, that's a beautiful thing.
Gotcha. As long as the art is good, you're gonna listen to the podcast. Okay, cool. I was right the whole time. Cool.
Let's do a couple more comments and get out of here. I want to say thank you to Raphael Druniak for joining us on the VI PAL side of things, becoming a channel member. Really appreciate you. Hope you enjoy your timed exclusive videos and your emojis in the chat. There is an exclusive that no one but a channel member can watch, which is Pen Pals. Our first episode went up in October. We will drop new episodes every month if we can. And we're taking your questions for those. So you leave us good questions, they will end up in the Pen Pal video.
And also, we did a talkback a couple weeks ago. So we'll occasionally do membership talkbacks after one of the main shows.
I really wanted to do one today, talk about politics, but
a little heated.
Emily, the goaltending drummer, says, this is why I think Batman has struggled since Grant left, even though Scott had a great run. Everyone since Grant wants to make a big epic run that recontextualizes old concepts. Only Grant can do it. I would not say only Grant, but I would say that the list of creators who I trust to pull that off is not long. Alan Moore's on it. Al Ewing is quickly becoming a part of that conversation. Obviously Grant.
Dennis Kemp, possibly. We'll see what Martian Manhunter's like.
Too new for me.
Sure. I would say not that Grant's the only one who can do it. It's that Grant's the only one who has been able to do it recently, as most recent.
I think current Alan Moore could do it, Sean.
I think Alan Moore can do anything.
I think he could absolutely do it. We would not like it. And I think the worst part is he would be 1,000% right.
Well, dude, the thing is that it's crazy because Alan Moore has put out comics since the day he left DC, right?
Yep.
So we already know he's still got the chops. What was that fucking horror book he did? What was it? Marco?
Providence.
Providence? Bro.
Fucking love that dude.
The best horror book I've ever read, and I cannot read it again. It's not, you can't get it physically. Like, you can't get it.
And you haven't read the follow-up stuff to that, right?
No.
Oh, dude, there's a universe there.
So my man casually on the low reinvented horror. Said, oh, people like horror Cthulhu. Okay, cool. Let me take that and do the best thing that's ever been done with it. So if you want to hand him the keys to any kingdom or give him a little micro line, please. Please, I'll read it.
Pula says Ram, but he's had his stuff on Detective Comics, and I feel like maybe he needs stuff to still push the boundary there. Yeah, Electric, Courtyard, Necronomicon, and Providence, the trio. So good.
Necronomicon's rough, in my opinion. That's a tough read.
The full thing? The actual thing?
Well, no, I mean, Alan Moore's,
I'm waiting for the joke.
Yeah.
So Providence was last in the series?
Yeah, it's the...
I didn't know.
Yeah, and the other one, Courtyard's like a 4-issue, Necronomicon's like 6, and then Providence was the 12 issue.
Okay.
I gotta get on those.
Yeah,
I have a
Providence is crazy.
controversial statement. Hound says Jeff Johns can absolutely do it. I don't know if he can.
I don't know if you'd want to.
And I think you have to have that desire to like really totally flip the script.
Wait, before I answer at least, are we saying can as in can do that now or can as in has? Because I would argue he has already done that.
In what?
Well, Green Lantern.
We're talking about Batman though, aren't we?
Oh, I thought, okay, all right, fair enough. Yeah, okay,
Is that
yeah.
that's where we're still talking about the Alan Moore,
Right.
No, you're right.
Gmo, yeah.
It's a pure dissection of the character using multiple iterations and history, like in ages of the character, to synthesize it into one story. Is that kind of what I'm getting here?
Yeah.
I think Jeff has done it for Green Lantern,
Sure.
Absolutely. But I don't think I don't know if Jeff has it for Batman.
I think it's unfair to put this on other creators and book whether they can do it, because it's such a, like, Alan Moore and Grant Morrison have done it. Gaiman did something similar with that one issue of Batman. Whatever happened to the Cape Crusader? Maybe there was 2 issues. But I think there needs to be a need in a story to be told that not everyone has, not everyone wants. So I have trouble fantasy booking this. But I agree. Like, Jeff Johns did it for Green Lantern because he had that story to tell.
And I think it's important, the story that needs to be told. I think that factors very much into how that even plays with certain characters. Like, other writers can take on the mantles, can take on the characters and the writers, and I'm sure there are instances where we feel some writers are more fit for others, by virtue of the subject matter, tone, all that kind of stuff. And so I don't believe that he has that tone to fundamentally impact from the ground a Batman. I think he has that tone and that drive and that will, literally, for Green Lantern.
Different skill sets, in my opinion. He had it for Aquaman too. I don't know what Grant Morrison's Aquaman would look like. You know,
It'd be so
you want
good.
everyone on Aquaman, Marco. That is
just-
like, Aquaman is number 2 for you. Besides Swamp Thing?
Is
If your
Figure
hand's
drawing.
bloody because you broke the Swamp Thing glass, the only other glass you have to break is Aquaman.
Figure drawing says, related to my previous question, if each of you had to choose between being a great artist or a great writer, which would you choose?
artist easy.
Writer, because that's what I am. And I would love to be better at it.
Writer for me, because that's what I have a degree in and what I loved, past tense, to do. It would be nice to love to do that again.
Writer, that's my life stream. Although I was thinking how cool it would be if I could draw, because then I wouldn't need to find an artist.
Always.
Like, you can get better as a writer. Like, look at Chip or DWJ. Like, they're both really talented writers right now, but they also both made their bones drawing, and they've gotten better. I would say that both of them are better writers now than when they started writing, but they started as really good artists. So if I can get better as a writer but start great as an artist, I mean, my God, you're the keys to the kingdom.
Is there anyone known who started off as a writer and became an artist?
Not that I can think
You don't
of.
really see it happen in that direction.
I
I feel like
Ray Fox.
I feel maybe this is controversial. I feel like writing can be
feel like it went the
learned.
other way.
Writing can be learned and taught, whereas art and drawing and all that is almost innate. And I don't want to say you're born with it.
Yeah, I don't think it's innate, but it's something you have to keep practicing from
Yeah.
like a very, very young age.
It's much harder to
Yeah.
physically,
Yeah.
literally do.
Yeah.
Like, no offense to writers, but somebody could wake up one morning and decide, hey, I'm going to learn how to write. It is a much bigger a pill to swallow in my eyes than say, I'm going to learn how to be a great artist. People have done it. It's been doable, but I haven't really seen it done in comics.
Steve Matthews, giving us a compliment, says, super impressed by both Sean and Tyler's writings that you have dropped on Patreon. Thanks for that. You're very welcome. Thank you, Steve, for that compliment. Both Tyler and I put some of our writing on the Patreon in our newsletter. So if you guys wanted to check that out, you certainly could.
If you like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, that's what I put on my Patreon last time.
I made a first draft of a Comics Pal sitcom pitch on my
that was good too.
newsletter,
Yeah.
which
I
Tyler's
may-
grandma loved, by the way.
Cosm the Andric, I can never read your name, bro, says, do you guys ever think about creating your own comics or getting a team together to do so? Just a pitch even and let someone do it.
Never thought about that once.
Yeah.
To
Never
let
even done
someone do it? What do you...
Not my baby.
Certainly Cale and I have both worked with artists, Marco has too, at different points. Both of them have work you can see, whereas I do not. In the sense that Cale has published books and Marco did a book through the Comics Jam.
Yeah, a couple pages, a couple times. Yeah, and even separately.
I don't think I knew that, Marco.
Yeah, dude, go check out one of my Patreon posts. One of my 2-pager.
Okay.
Oh, and there's also an unfortunate short one that I really love that Marco did.
Oh yeah,
But it's mired in tragedy, so it's
Yep.
not it doesn't
Magical
count
Girl.
anymore.
Oh my god!
You're gonna have to message me on the Discord
Even
after
he
this.
filed it away.
I was like, "What? You know what's so funny? Did I ever tell you guys I got the physical for that? Yeah,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I threw that out maybe like
I'm not surprised.
maybe at the beginning of this year, maybe a couple, definitely at like springtime ish. I have the
Spring
frame
cleaning.
though. Yeah, spring cleaning. Yeah, I have the frame
Cool.
though.
Yeah, of course you kept the frame. Frames are expensive, dog.
That's so funny.
Oh my goodness. All right. On that note, we're gonna cut out of here, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. It's been about 3 hours. That's our time. You guys have been great today. This has been an amazing stream, I think. A lot of support, a lot of you guys hanging out with us, chit-chatting. We have been off of our format for a long time at this point. We're nearly like almost an hour off format. So thank you so much for sticking around. Make sure you hit the like button if you haven't. Be subscribed to the channel if you're not. We're trying to get to 5K subs, and only you can help us. So please do both of those things. The next time we will be live with you is Thursday for Pals Pulse. We'll be having a great time there, as we always do. Another big week. I feel like the end of this year is just big week after big week after big week for comics, which is a beautiful thing for us. So we will see you on Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern.